Chapter 70. Zheng Tan decided to make phone calls every day because he felt that he wouldn't be able to return to Chuhua City anytime soon. Every time he called, Zheng Tan would be on the dot. By this time, the two children should have returned home from school. Then he would listen to little Pomelo and Jiao Yuan complain about what happened at school. Even though there was not much substance to the conversation, Zheng Tan's mood was inexplicably better after the call. Even though he could not speak on the phone, hearing the voice on the other side of the phone made him feel at ease. The tip of his tail wagged slowly. After the phone call, Zheng Tan threw his almost dead phone into his bag. At this time, Fang Xiaokong also put away his fishing pole. He asked the driver to help deliver the fish to the farmer. Since he was bored, Zheng Tan saw a small plant next to him. He raised his paw and played with it. Zheng Tan often saw this kind of plant. It could be found everywhere. There was almost no geographical restriction. Are you playing with plantain? Fang Xiaokong held a bun in his hand and nibbled on it as he walked over. He was hungry from fishing. Dinner wouldn't be ready anytime soon, so he asked for a few buns to fill his stomach first. Fang Xiaokong handed the bun that he took a bite out of to Zheng Tan. He asked, "Do you want to eat it?" Zheng Tan looked at the gap on the bun and turned his head. He was very disgusted. "Oh, I remember Associate Professor Jiao said that you don't eat things that others have bitten. Okay, I'll bite off the part that I've bitten." Fang Xiaokong took a few more bites from the gap and handed it to Zheng Tan. "Do you want to eat it?" Zheng Tan. "Are you King insulting my intelligence?" "Forget it. This bun is pretty good. It's made with good pork. I can tell." Fang Xiaokong finished the bun in his hand in a few bites. He then squatted down and looked at the grass in front of Zheng Tan. "Do you know why this grass is called plantain?" Fang Xiaokong asked. Zheng Tan paused in the middle of plucking the grass. He really didn't know about this. Perhaps it was because it was too common, so he didn't pay much attention to it. In ancient times, whether it was official carriages, private carriages, ox carts, horse carriages, rickshaws, wedding carriages, torture carriages, or war chariots, there would always be this kind of grass on the side of the road. However, why did it have to be called plantain grass and not plantain grass or plantain grass? There was a story that had to be mentioned. In the Han Dynasty, there was a famous general called Ma Wu. He was defeated in a battle. Coincidentally, there was a drought, and all the crops died. His troops retreated to the wilderness where there was no sign of human habitation. Many people and horses died of thirst. Those who did not die also fell ill and peed blood. Later, a coachman found that a few horses were no longer peeing blood, and they were very energetic. They no longer looked sickly. After observing them, he found that these horses were eating a kind of wild grass. He tried it himself, and his condition was much better. Ma Wu asked him where he found the grass. The coachman said that it was in front of the carriage. Ma Wu laughed and said, "What a good plantain grass." Zheng Tan listened to Fang Xiaokong's story of the plantain grass. He raised his paw and plucked the grass with wrinkled leaves. He really didn't expect this grass to have such a story and medicinal value. However, after listening to Fang Xiaokong's story, this person also had a lot of feelings for the plantain grass. After telling the story of Ma Wu and the plantain grass, Fang Xiaokong looked into the distance. On the other side of the pond, behind the brick wall with grass and vines growing on it, there were a few wisps of smoke floating in the air. The smell of oil that belonged to a farmer's family was overflowing. My grandfather said that he was like this grass. It was so common that it could be found anywhere, and it was easy to find. However, at the right time, it could display its brilliance and make people unable to forget it. Hey, speaking of which, when I was young, I used this grass to cure my mumps. Before that, I never thought that the grass that I stepped on every day would become my own medicine. The driver who came out of the farmer's house saw third young master Fang squatting beside the cat and talking to himself. He suddenly understood why the other members of the Fang family had a helpless expression when they talked about third young master Fang. Sometimes, third young master Fang looked like a lunatic and unreliable. However, at the right time, he was sharp enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to become the chairman of the Shaoguang group. Everyone in the Fang family knew that every time Fang Xiaokong's career hit a low point or when he was unable to make a decision regarding the important development plans of the group, he would disappear for a period of time. He would say that he was on a business trip to the outside world, but in fact, he was going out alone to travel or simply stroll around. Every time Fang Xiaokong returned, the Xiaoguang group would experience a huge leap. The driver shook his head. Ordinary people couldn't understand this way of thinking. After he finished speaking, Fang Xiaokong got up and stretched his legs. Then he walked towards the farmer's house while singing a little tune. Walking on the small road in the countryside, the old cow returning at dusk is my companion. Zheng Tan stretched his body and looked at the gradually darkening sky as he walked back. 2 days later, Fang Xiaokong finally decided to leave. When he left, he also bought some local specialties, especially the buns made by the farmer's house. Fang Xiaokong liked it very much and also brought them along to eat on the way. Finally, it was time to leave. Zheng Tan didn't sleep much the night before or during the day. The main reason was that he was too excited. From here to Chuhua City, if they took the highway, it would take more than 3 hours. If they left in the morning, they would arrive at Chuhua City at noon. They could have lunch there. After all, Chuhua City was a big city. Even if they arrived at the city at noon, it would still take more than 40 minutes to get to Chuhua University. This was under the condition that there was no traffic jam. If there was a traffic jam, it would take even longer. Therefore, when they arrived at noon, they first found a place to have lunch. During lunch, Fang Xiaokong left for a while. When he reappeared, he was wearing a business suit and leather shoes. His hair was combed neatly and not a single strand was out of place. His entire aura had changed. He had the aura of an elite and looked like a boss. He was really pretentious. He didn't know where he put that big backpack. Fang Xiaokong had a new phone in his hand with a new color screen. He didn't know where he hid the previous one. The driver knew that if a similar situation happened again, third young master Fang would be prepared to leave the house. The set of equipment that he put away would definitely be used again. On the way to Chuhua University, Zheng Tan listened to Fang Xiaokong talk nonsense with a few bosses in Chuhua City on his phone. He thought about the person who played the guitar and sang, "Go square," in the square. Clothes make the man. He was indeed extraordinary. When they passed by a crossroad, they happened to run into a red light. The car stopped in front of the zebra crossing. Zheng Tan stood up and looked to the side. A silver-gray private car slowly drove over. Zheng Tan looked at it. Why did it look so familiar? When the silver-gray car stopped beside Zheng Tan's off-road vehicle at the red light, Zheng Tan saw the person in the driver's seat. At the same time, the person in the driver's seat seemed to have sensed him and turned his head to look at him. Human eyes met cat eyes. *CK. I was wondering why it looked so familiar. So it was this guy. Zheng Tan clenched his claws and scurried from the back seat to the front passenger seat. There was a box of local specialties on the front passenger seat. Zheng Tan stood on it and narrowed his eyes to look at the person through the window. The person in the silver-gray car was Ren Chong. However, Professor Ren Chong was no longer the person who pretended to be a gentleman. He looked very tired, depressed, and unwilling. Anyone who was forced to leave would be like this, let alone someone like Ren Chong, who always prided himself on being superior and an elite who returned from overseas. Not to mention whether he had any self-esteem or not. With Ren Chong's unwillingness to admit defeat and his unscrupulous nature, how could he calm down after being forced to such a state? How could he not hate? He gritted his teeth. The strong hatred made his face contort. Just as he was thinking about how to retaliate, he turned his head and saw the black cat outside the window. At this moment, Ren Chong felt as if he had been thrown into a tank of liquid nitrogen and would shatter with a single tap. His hatred was replaced by fear. Ren Chong was sure that the cat in the car next door was the one that belonged to Associate Professor Jiao. Although there were many black cats that looked like this one, looking at the way it squinted its eyes, there was no doubt that it was that cat. However, wasn't this cat caught by the cat trafficker and disposed of? Why would it appear here? Why would it appear again? Ren Chong didn't understand and didn't want to believe it. Zheng Tan looked at Ren Chong. He already knew that he was caught because of this person in front of him. He was the culprit who almost turned him into a hot pot. Even if Jiao Pa and the others didn't say it explicitly, Jing Tan still analyzed it himself. If he wasn't locked in the car and Ren Chang's window was closed, Jing Tan would definitely jump over and beat this bastard hypocrite to death. F***CK, what did my cat do to piss you off? You actually hired a professional cat trafficker to catch me and even used a tranquilizer gun. If it weren't for my special body, I would have been anesthetized to death. Also, the street in the south is full of cat meat restaurants. It's simply a physical and mental torture. Jing Tan looked at Ren Chong with a murderous look. It raised its paw and swiped at its neck. Ren Chong's face immediately turned pale. What kind of cat could make such a murderous and threatening move? Ren Chong had never seen it before. Even when he found someone to dispose of the cat, it was just a guess. But now, he really noticed the strangeness of this cat. Then, his mind was filled with the black cat's movements just now. Every detail of its movements was magnified in his mind. The murderous look in its eyes, the sharp claws, and the swipe in the air. It felt like it was swiping at his neck. It felt cold. Ren Chong shuddered. Just then, the light turned green and the SUV started. Ren Chong's car was still in the same place. The cars behind began to honk to urge him, but Ren Chong didn't know. His back was now covered in cold sweat. The things that had happened in the past few days had drained him. He often had nightmares at night, all about the black cat. Every time he woke up, he could comfort himself that the cat had been disposed of and that he didn't need to worry. But he didn't expect to meet the cat here. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of knocking on the car window brought Ren Chong back to reality. F***King Drive. What are you doing here? Did you bring your brain? It's red light again. F***CK. A car owner took advantage of the red light to come out of the car and knock on the door. When the green light turned green again, Ren Chong was still a little out of it. He should have turned left, but he kept driving. When he reacted, he hurriedly made a sharp turn. He didn't control the car well and directly hit the roadside lamp. Chapter 71. Not far from the intersection, there was another inconspicuous car parked there. The person inside was making a phone call. We really didn't do it. We haven't even stopped him, and he got into trouble himself. It can only be attributed to fate. Tell Brother Leopard that Ren Chong has been sent to the hospital. We'll see what Brother Leopard says about the rest. We'll call it a day. Chuhua City High-Tech Development Zone, Tianyuan Biology. A person sat opposite Celestine. He was about the same age as Celestine. He had no expression on his face, and it was the same when he answered the phone. Celestine had long been used to this. After all, they were buddies who grew up together. What's up? Is there a new situation? Celestine asked. The person opposite him put his phone in his pocket and said, Leopard said that the person got into trouble while driving. They didn't do anything. Celestine was curious. Even if Ren Chong got into trouble, he wouldn't be so crazy that he couldn't drive steadily. Your people really didn't do anything? Didn't they threaten him? No. The person opposite him said affirmatively, now he's in the hospital. He'll probably stay there for a while. What are you going to do? Celestine thought for a while and waved his hand. Forget it. Ask your people to leave. I'll take care of the rest. The person opposite him nodded, made a brief phone call, and sat down again. Howsy, have you thought about the matter I told you last time? Celestine asked. About the transportation? I've already started to choose people, Yi Hao said. That's good. Yuan Zi has been urging for the past few days. The quantity of goods is quite large, and some of the samples are quite special. He's planning to set up a specialized logistics department after expansion. It's best to decide on the candidates this week. He said he wants to start training as soon as possible. The two of them discussed the candidates again. Yi Hao looked at the time and got up to leave. Before leaving, Yi Hao asked a question, did you really do all that just for a cat? Yi Hao was referring to some of the things that had happened a while ago, such as the investigation of a group of cat traffickers and the university professor whose surname was Ren. Yi Hao could not understand why these people would make such a big move for a cat. No matter what, it was just a cat. Was it necessary? It could really be called a murder case caused by a cat. Celestine smiled. Yes, my senior still owes that cat a favor. Anyway, it's a very special cat. You'll know when you meet it. Oh, that guy seems to be coming back soon. Yi Hao did not comment on Celestine's words. He patted the corner of his clothes and left. At this moment, Zheng Tan, who was sitting in the off-road vehicle, didn't know what had happened in Chuhua City during his absence. When Ren Chang's car hit the street lamp, Zheng Tan's car was already far away, so he didn't know what had happened to Ren Chong. When the green light turned green and the two cars separated, Zheng Tan was still thinking about when he could take revenge. Fang Xiaokong saw the scene that happened when the car stopped at the red light. As for Ren Chong, Fang Xiaokong had already obtained information about him through some means, so he recognized Ren Chong. He planned to add fuel to the fire when he had the time. When the off-road vehicle was about to arrive at Chuhua University, Zheng Tan put aside his other thoughts and looked at the familiar roads and buildings. He couldn't sit still anymore, so he stood on the chair and leaned against the window to look out. After more than a month, the leaves on many trees had grown thick. He didn't know what the compound was like. The off-road vehicle drove in through the main gate of Chuhua University, but Fang Xiaokong and the driver didn't know where the East Side family compound was, so they could only ask along the way. Zheng Tan was really impatient. He scratched the window and asked Fang Xiaokong to open it, then he jumped out. The familiar environment made Zheng Tan feel relaxed. Zheng Tan took a deep breath and smelled the familiar scent in the air. He felt like his heart was about to float. He didn't care about Fang Xiaokong anymore. Zheng Tan started running. Even though he had only been away for a month, he had experienced so many things that it felt like years. However, when he set foot in this place again, the familiar route naturally appeared in Zheng Tan's mind. The leaves of the sycamore trees by the road had grown so long that they could cover the sky above the road. The noisy birds on campus didn't seem so annoying anymore. Running among the flowers and plants on the side of the road, his originally tired body became lighter and lighter in the wind that blew against his face. What did it feel like to be anxious to return home? Now, Zheng Tan finally understood. In the off-road vehicle, the driver looked at Fang Xiaokong. Fang Xiaokong gave him a helpless look. "Follow me." However, within 2 minutes, they couldn't see the cat anymore. Why did the cat run so fast? It's so impatient. Ask the people next to you where the East Side family compound is, Fang Xiaokong said. Fang Xiaokong and the others couldn't find Zheng Tan because Zheng Tan ran fast and was in the flowers and plants. Another reason was that Zheng Tan took a shortcut. After staying at Chuhua University for so long, Zheng Tan walked around every day when he had nothing to do. He knew where the shortcuts were. Therefore, in order to reach the East Side family compound as soon as possible, Zheng Tan took a shortcut. Seeing the familiar gate of the East Side family compound, Zheng Tan couldn't wait to do a few backflips to vent his excitement. The guard uncle had one elbow on the window, supporting his chin as he read the newspaper. Zheng Tan's body was too small. From the guard uncle's angle, he couldn't see Zheng Tan at all. When they passed by the guardhouse's window, Zheng Tan jumped up and slapped the guard's head. The guard uncle was shocked by the sudden slap. When he looked up, he saw a black shadow flash by. He poked his head out and saw the black shadow that had disappeared for more than a month. "Oh, black charcoal is back?" The guard uncle laughed. He didn't care if the cat could respond. Although there were many black cats, he could tell who it was at a glance. Besides, how could someone with bad eyesight be a guard? Seeing the cat walk away, the guard uncle sat back down. He shook the newspaper in his hand and was about to continue reading. However, he suddenly remembered that there was no one in the Jiao family. How was the cat going to get in? Zheng Tan excitedly ran to the Jiao family's building. He jumped up reflexively and rubbed against the card reader. However, there was no reaction at all. Then Zheng Tan remembered that he didn't have an access card around his neck. F***CK, how was he going to get in without a card? Also, if there was no one in the house, he couldn't open the door. It was already past 2 o'clock. There weren't many people going in and out of the building. Maybe someone would come back in the afternoon. Shaking his tail in annoyance, Zheng Tan turned his head to look at Depang's house. The fat man was lying on the balcony, staring at Zheng Tan with his eyes wide open. He was probably still wondering why Zheng Tan had suddenly appeared after disappearing for more than a month. Zheng Tan jumped onto Depang's balcony. He was going to ask the old lady for help. Depang got up and ran over. He stopped in front of Zheng Tan and sniffed. He seemed to be confirming Zheng Tan's identity. Then he raised his paw and patted Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan didn't care about the way Depang greeted him. What he noticed was that after not seeing him for more than a month, this guy seemed to have gotten fatter. His base was also bigger. He probably squatted on instant noodles. Looking from the back, when he ran, his legs were in a figure-8 shape. Looking at Depang now, and thinking about the first time he saw him last year, he could only sigh. He still remembered how fresh he was back then. There was still the smell of food in the house. It wasn't the old lady's lunch, but Depang's food. The old lady made all Depang's cat food. Depang's current cat food was made by the old lady. To some extent, the old lady had spoiled him. When Zheng Tan went in, he found the old lady resting. He guessed that she had just fallen asleep. The big bowl on the table was still warm. In front of the old lady's door, Zheng Tan didn't go in immediately. Depang, who was standing next to Zheng Tan, looked like he wanted to stop Zheng Tan, but he was hesitant. Zheng Tan pulled his ear. "Look at you. It was as if you were afraid of waking up the old lady." The old lady was old, and it wasn't easy for her to fall asleep. Zheng Tan didn't want to bother the old lady. Besides, he had other ways. Coming out of Depang's house, Zheng Tan was going to find the Jiao Pa in the biology building. As for Depang, it was still squatting on the balcony, guarding the old lady. It was like a guard dog. No, it was more responsible than a dog. The security guard, who had been looking out the window, saw Zheng Tan come out. He waved his hand. "Black charcoal, come here and wait for a while. Don't run around. Here, I have some small yellow croakers." Before the security guard finished speaking, Zheng Tan ran out like a gust of wind. There was a small path from the eastern courtyard to the biology building. It was closer, so Zheng Tan didn't run into Fang Xiaokong and the others. When he came to the biology building again, Zheng Tan was a little nervous. He hoped that the Jiao Pa didn't change offices. Xin and Su Chu weren't in the public laboratory on the first floor. Zheng Tan went to the tree near the Jiao Pa's office and looked inside. There were 2 people in the office, and neither of them was the Jiao Pa. Xin was teaching Su Chu how to analyze the experimental data. The 2 of them were sitting in front of the computer, typing on the keyboard and writing on the notebook with a pen. Suddenly, they heard the sound of the window behind them. They turned around at the same time and saw a black cat open the screen and jump in. "Black charcoal?" Xin was surprised. "Boss's cat? Didn't you say that it was lost?" Su Chu asked. "Yesterday, I heard from the boss that someone found it, so I sent it back. I didn't expect it to arrive today." Zheng Tan ignored their words and stared at Su Chu, which made Su Chu's hair stand. "Brother, why does it keep staring at me?" Su Chu touched his arm and felt goosebumps. The cat's eyes were a little scary. "You can change to another chair," Xin said. "Okay." Su Chu stood up and pulled a chair across the table. After Su Chu stood up, Zheng Tan jumped onto the small chair and looked at the time on the bottom right corner of the computer. The Jiao Pa seemed to have classes in the afternoon, and he didn't know when he would be back. While he was thinking, the office door opened. Associate Professor Jiao walked in with teaching materials. He smiled when he saw the cat's head on the desk. He just received a call from Fang Xiaokong and came over after 1 class. There were 2 more classes and 3 classes in the afternoon. Associate Professor Jiao handed the teaching materials in his hand to Xin. "There are 2 more classes. You can go and talk to your juniors. I told them that you will continue to teach them in the next 2 classes. They are all waiting." Xin was speechless. It was the 2nd time this month. Chapter 72. Fang Xiaokong asked the driver to drive the car into the parking lot of the East Side family compound, then waited in front of Block B. They asked where they came from along the way, but the guard refused to let them in. Fang Xiaokong called Associate Professor Jiao and complained, "Your black charcoal threw me away after using me. He didn't even bring me along. Is this how you treat your benefactor?" After receiving confirmation from Associate Professor Jiao, the guard didn't say anything else. He even curiously asked Fang Xiaokong how he knew Associate Professor Jiao's black cat. Fang Xiaokong made up a bunch of nonsense. After all, he definitely wouldn't tell anyone that he was a performer with a cat. Why did Fang Xiaokong always go alone every time he went out to relax? because he did a lot of stupid things that he didn't want to talk about. Even if he didn't care, the rest of the Fang family cared a lot. Therefore, the Fang family would call Fang Xiaokong every few days to ask him to be more careful outside and not embarrass himself. Fang Xiaokong stood downstairs and looked around in boredom. He had to admit that the old residence area of the university was indeed quieter, making people feel relaxed. It was no wonder that the black cat had been thinking about this place for a long time. As he was looking around, Fang Xiaokong suddenly felt that he was being watched. He looked to the side and looked down. He saw a fat dragon sitting on the balcony and looking at the two of them. Fang Xiaokong didn't have any special feelings about cats. They were just pets. At most, they were just a little troublesome. But after meeting Zheng Tan, Fang Xiaokong began to realize that there were some special cats. And today, he saw another cat that was rather special. It was hard to say how special it was, but Fang Xiaokong had this feeling. He looked around, walked to the flower bed, pulled a blade of grass, and put it between the railings of the balcony on the first floor to play with the cat. When he tilted his head to avoid the grass that was thrown at him, he saw that the other party was still persistent. He got up and took 2 steps back before squatting down again. The distance it retreated to was just enough that Fang Xiaokong couldn't touch it with the grass in his hand. Fang Xiaokong stretched out his arm and tried, but he still couldn't touch it. He wanted to try another branch, but before he could stop, the old lady came out from her afternoon nap. "What do you want to do to my Dapang?" The old lady looked unfriendly. "Hello, I thought this cat was special and wanted to play with it. It's my first time here and I'm here to help Teacher Jiao bring the cat back." Fang Xiaokong calmly retracted his hand and revealed a harmless smile. He then said that he knew Teacher Jiao, who lived on the 5th floor. "Bring a cat? What kind of cat?" the old lady asked. She had heard that the Jiao family didn't want to raise other cats. "A black cat called Black Charcoal. You should know it, right?" "Black Charcoal is back?" Seeing that Fang Xiaokong nodded, the old lady was very happy. In the courtyard, the only cats that she really liked were Dapang and Associate Professor Jiao's black cat. When she heard that the Jiao family's Black Charcoal was kidnapped, she was sad for a long time and asked her son to help her find it. She didn't expect him to be back. As they were talking, the Jiao Pa arrived on his scooter. Zheng Tan was squatting in the basket in front of the scooter. "Hey, it really is Black Charcoal. It's good that we found it," the old lady said. The Jiao Pa parked the scooter and said a few words to the old lady. He opened the building's door and took Fang Xiaokong upstairs. As for Zheng Tan, he rushed upstairs as soon as the door was opened. When he climbed to the 3rd floor, Zheng Tan stopped. The door to Professor Lolan's 3rd floor was ajar. There were sounds of people moving inside. Zheng Tan pushed the door open and walked in. The floor had just been mopped and wasn't dry yet. There was a muddy smell in the room. Professor Lulan probably moved a few pots of flowers back from the small flower bed and transplanted some plants. After he was done, there would be many muddy footprints in the room. Therefore, every time he was done, Old Man Lon would thoroughly mop the floor. Zheng Tan walked in. He had just run outside, so there was still some mud on his toes. Therefore, when Zheng Tan walked, he left some muddy footprints on the floor. Old Man Lon came from the balcony with a flower pot in his hand. When he saw Zheng Tan in the living room, he was stunned. "Black Charcoal?" Old Man Lon asked tentatively. Zheng Tan ignored him. He looked around the room and didn't see Old Lady Zhai. When Old Lady Zhai wasn't around, Old Man Lan's temper was hard to control. Looking at the muddy footprints under his feet, Zheng Tan turned and ran out of the door. "Hey, little bastard, it's really you. Look at the footprints you made." When he saw the cat stretch its neck to look into the room, Old Man Lon was sure that it was the cat from the 5th floor. Although Old Man Lon was scolding loudly, Zheng Tan, who had already run out, didn't see the smile in the old man's eyes. Fang Xiaokong, who had just passed by the 3rd floor, heard Old Man Lan scolding. He said to the Jiao Pa who was leading the way, "Your cat is very famous and popular." "Yes, everyone in the quad knows him," the Jiao Pa laughed. When the Jiao Pa opened the door, Zheng Tan rushed in first. He ran to the sofa and rolled around, then walked around the small room. Many of the furnishings in the room were still the same as when he left. There were no changes and there was no smell of other cats. This made Zheng Tan very happy. It meant that the Jiao family still valued him. After Fang Xiaokong entered, he pulled a chair and sat down. He watched as Jing Tan rolled around on the sofa and patrolled the area. After patrolling, he even went to the toilet to pee, then ran to the balcony and howled twice. Then, the quad was filled with dog barking and cat meowing. Jing Tan didn't care about Fang Xiaokong and the others. He was now excited to be home. After howling a few times, his excitement gradually calmed down. Everyone in the Eastern District, I'm back. In the afternoon, Zhao Le came over and bought a few bags of food. Some of it was for the 2 children of the Jiao family, but most of it was for Jing Tan. He said that it was to help Jing Tan get over the shock and to celebrate his return. Because of this, Fang Xiaokong laughed at Zhao Lu for a long time. Jiao Ma also came back a little earlier today. She was now teaching in the middle school. After receiving a call from the Jiao Pa, she asked for leave and came back first. The Jiao family was very grateful to Fang Xiaokong and invited him to stay for dinner, but Fang Xiaokong refused. He still had a lot of things to do in Chuhua City. After relaxing for so long, he had to throw himself into the busy business and various dinner parties again. He didn't have much time to stay here. This time, he was only here to send the cat over. If he needed to go out in the future, he might come back to look for the black cat. Before leaving, Fang Xiaokong left behind the souvenirs that Jing Tan had picked on the way back, a platinum membership card of the Shaoguang Hotel, and Fang Xiaokong's personal business card. The Jiao Pa, who already knew a little about the situation from Zhao Le, couldn't help but be surprised when he saw Fang Xiaokong's business card. He didn't expect this person to be a big shot. His cat was really lucky. The Jiao family was filled with a joyous atmosphere that night. Jing Tan, after more than a month of wandering, finally had someone to help him brush his fur again. Then, at night, he crawled into little Pomelo's bed again. The next day, when Jing Tan opened his eyes, he was still a little dazed. After waiting for 2 seconds, he realized that he was really back this time. Waking up with the 2 children and eating breakfast together was also a very enjoyable process. After experiencing the wandering experience, Jing Tan felt that this kind of life was really too damn good. He didn't have to think of ways to steal things through the window, and he didn't have to be afraid of being chased and beaten after being discovered. Because of Jing Tan's arrest, the Jiao family was nervous when Jing Tan went out for a walk. However, after a few days, they found that nothing had happened. Everything was still the same as before, so they were a little relieved. Now, many places in the school had been replaced with new cameras, and the management was a little stricter. There were also cameras installed in several places in the family compound. Of course, these cameras were only installed in some public places and wouldn't invade the privacy of the staff in the family compound. During the time that Jing Tan was back, even if he went out, he would always walk around in the family compound with Depang, Huang, and the sheriff. They hadn't seen each other for more than a month. Other than Depang becoming chubbier, Huang and the sheriff hadn't changed much. They were basically the same as before, but they were a little more excited when they saw Jing Tan. After sending the 2 children and the Jiao Ma out of the compound in the morning, Jing Tan and the 3 cats, who were out for a walk, wandered around the compound. At this time, there were many people in the compound who were either working or going to school. There weren't many people outside. Jing Tan was a little bored. Although life here was very comfortable, it was too comfortable, and it made Jing Tan a little bored. After 2 steps, Jing Tan's ears twitched, and he looked at a building. This was a corner of the eastern compound, and the building that Jing Tan was looking at was the innermost building of the eastern compound. Usually, even if it wasn't working hours, there weren't many people walking here. Jing Tan followed the sound and walked to the building. After confirming the source of the sound, he went to the balcony of a resident on the 1st floor. He jumped onto the balcony railing, walked from the railing to the window, and then jumped onto the windowsill. The door to the balcony of the bedroom with the balcony was closed, and the windows were also closed. However, the curtains inside weren't drawn, and were only half drawn, so Jing Tan could see the situation in the room clearly from the window that wasn't covered. In the room, a young man and woman were kissing passionately. They looked like they had just come back from outside, and they were wearing clothes. However, now their clothes were being taken off piece by piece as the 2 moved. Jing Tan didn't expect to see such a hot scene in the morning, so he was very excited. He stood on the windowsill and put his head in front of the window, almost sticking to the glass on the window to look inside. Depang, who was squatting in the grass near the flower bed and squinting his eyes to bask in the sun, saw Zheng Tan staying by the window and curiously walked over. Although he had become fat again, his jumping ability was still very good, and he easily jumped onto the balcony railing. Then he walked to Zheng Tan's side and tilted his head to look inside. Zheng Tan noticed the movement next to him and looked at Depang, thinking to himself, "Can you King understand?" After a few seconds, Huang and the sheriff, who were playing with bugs outside, also came over. The 4 cats squeezed on the windowsill and looked inside through the window that wasn't covered. The man and woman inside had already taken off their clothes and were lying on the bed. The foreplay was almost done, and they were ready to take off their condoms and go for it. The woman lying on the bed inadvertently glanced at the window. Then, with a loud shout, she kicked the man in the chest and directly kicked him off the bed. Chapter 73. Go away. Along with the go away, a pen holder on the desk by the window was thrown out to hit the cats. But the 4 cats dodged too fast, and the pen holder fell to the ground along with the pen inside. The window over there was a bang sound, and the curtains were pulled to the end. No one could see what was going on inside. Zheng Tan looked at the closed curtains and was a little disappointed. He didn't expect to be discovered. Shaking his head, Zheng Tan turned to leave, but he saw Huang walk over there and look at a marker pen that fell out of the pen holder on the ground. It raised its paw and poked at it, then suddenly jumped around the marker pen like a kangaroo, rolled on the ground, and played with it with its paw, as if it had found a new toy. The sheriff watched for a while not far away, and came over to play with the pen with Huang Erwo. Zheng Tan sighed. So, these cats didn't understand what they had just seen. In their eyes, live-action movies were not as attractive as a broken marker pen. Lying on the grass and basking in the sun, Zheng Tan jumped onto a tree and waited for Jiao Ma and the others to come back at noon. Although Zheng Tan had brought the access card with him, there was no one at home, and Zheng Tan didn't want to be alone at home. Being outside for more than a month really did affect him, and he couldn't sit still at home. In the afternoon, he still had to go to Xiaoguo's place. Xiaoguo only knew that Zheng Tan was back yesterday, and said that he was going to pick up Zheng Tan today. Zheng Tan had been away for more than a month, and he heard that Xiaoguo's pet advertisement wasn't going very well. Xiaoguo was used to Zheng Tan's high efficiency. When other cats in the store replaced him, not only was Xiaoguo anxious, but the other staff members also wanted to smash the equipment. This time, they really understood the helplessness of those who made animal movies. Sometimes, it wasn't just throwing food to make animals listen to you. During the filming process, a little other factor could make all the efforts go to waste. As Xiaoguo's requirements for advertising became higher and higher, the cats in the store could no longer meet the new standards. The starting point was too high. As a result, once Zheng Tan was not around, Xiaoguo had to spend more time, energy, and money to come up with a comparable advertisement. The good thing was that most of the time, it was just pictures. The video version couldn't be taken out, so there was no need to spend a lot of money on it. Many people who knew Xiaoguo asked him why he didn't have the video version anymore. Xiaoguo's reason was that the star cat had been brought back by its owner. As for when he would have the video version again, he wasn't sure. When he found out that Zheng Tan had returned, Xiaoguo almost rushed over to the east courtyard. However, he had too many things on hand, so he delayed it for a day. Jiaoma didn't have any classes in the afternoon, so she took a day off and personally brought Zheng Tan over. Xiaoguo said that Zheng Tan should go over and get used to the environment first. At the same time, Zheng Tan also had a thorough physical examination. When the cat first came back, Jiaoma saw that it looked the same as when it had left more than a month ago. It also ate a lot. Other than being a little excited, there was nothing wrong with it. It was in good spirits and had no external injuries. After taking its temperature, it was normal. The cat had been with Fang Xiaokong and the others for a long time, but Fang Xiaokong didn't say anything about it being sick. Jiaoma didn't send her cat over to Xiaoguo's place. After all, if she sent her cat over, her cat would probably be busy again. Jiaoma had heard a little about Xiaoguo's situation. She didn't want to send her cat over, so she wanted to delay it for a few more days. She didn't expect to hear the news so soon. Zheng Tan hadn't been to the pet center for a long time. He didn't see Li Yuanba and Peanut Candy. He heard that they had just gone out for a walk. After checking Zheng Tan and making sure that he was healthy, Jiao Ma was relieved. She went to the studio where the advertisement was shot and sat down to watch Xiaogua and the others shoot. The people in the studio saw Zheng Tan as if they had seen their savior. For the past month, every shoot was torture. Without comparison, they couldn't tell the difference. In the past, they thought that such an ordinary black cat was nothing special, except that it was a little smarter than other cats. After more than a month of experience, they knew that this was a big mistake. Jiao Ma sat next to them and saw the expressions of the staff when they saw her cat and couldn't help but praise it. She smiled proudly. Today, they only did some simple activities to let Zheng Tan get used to it. In the future, Xiaogua would come every 2 weeks. If there were special circumstances, Xiaogua would call the Jiao family. Logically speaking, the advertisement didn't need to be shot so frequently. 1 or 2 would be enough, but Xiaogua had his own plans. Zheng Tan didn't care. After all, he had nothing to do and could earn some pocket money. After leaving the pet center, Jiao Ma didn't go home directly. Instead, she took Zheng Tan to the affiliated hospital. There was a residential area next to the affiliated hospital. There were teachers and doctors from the affiliated hospital nearby, as well as some students who rented rooms here. However, the rent here was slightly more expensive, so there weren't many students here. Even if there were, they were either from wealthy families or graduate students at Tsinghua University. At the moment, in room 302 on the 3rd floor of the affiliated hospital building, Bai Yang, a third-year graduate student at the School of Management of Tsinghua University, was writing a thesis on the computer. After the internship and market research, there was a lot of data to be processed. He hoped to sort out a few reports as soon as possible. After graduation, these reports and theses published in foreign magazines would become his personal calling card when he entered society. Therefore, people like him were working very hard. While Bai Yang was typing on the keyboard, a cat jumped on the desk. The cat's back and tail were yellow with tiger stripes. Its belly was white. It was about 8 months old. The cat meowed twice. Bai Yang kept staring at the computer and ignored it. Seeing that Bai Yang was ignoring it, the cat squatted by the desk and looked at Bai Yang. Then it looked at some things on the desk. There was a pen. It raised its paw and moved it. Patter! The 2B pencil fell to the ground. The sharpened tip was broken. The cat tilted its head and looked at the pencil that fell to the ground. Then, it turned its attention back to the desk. There was an eraser. It raised its paw and moved it. The eraser was thrown off the edge of the desk. Looking at the eraser that fell to the ground and bounced twice, the cat looked at the other things on the desk again. There was a cup of warm coffee next to it. Only half of the cup was drunk. The cat went up and sniffed the cup. It was not interested. Then, it turned its attention to the computer. It looked at the mouse moving on the computer screen. It raised its paw and chased after the mouse. Bai Yang pushed it to the side. Stop fooling around. Go play by yourself. After that, he continued to organize his thesis. But the cat did not give up so easily. It pressed the keyboard and blocked the screen. Bai Yang had no choice but to carry it off the desk. Go to bed and sleep. Meow. The cat squatting on the floor saw that Bai Yang was ignoring it again. It meowed twice and did not get a response. It went to the other side of the desk and jumped on it. There was a piggy bank there. Next to the piggy bank was a wooden pen holder. There was only a gap between the 2 items. The cat did not leave. Instead, it squeezed between the 2 items and knocked the pen holder over. Then, it slowly walked to Bai Yang's side. There was a pen on the open notebook. The cat looked at the pen for 2 seconds. Then, it raised its paw and moved it. Patter! The pen fell to the ground. Bai Yang processed the data in the Excel and was ready to record it in the notebook. However, he found that the pen on the notebook was missing. He looked at the floor. The pen, eraser, and some plush pendants were thrown on the floor. Bai Yang let out a long sigh and bent down to pick up the pen from the computer chair. Seeing that, the cat lay on the edge of the table and stretched its arm and bent its palm to scratch the hair on the back of Bai Yang's head. Are you done fooling around? Bai Yang got up and roared. Meow, meow your ass. Bai Yang rubbed his forehead. He already regretted promising Li Xiaoqian to raise the cat. The cat was called Dodo. It was named by Li Xiaoqian. Dodo was probably abandoned by the students in the school after they raised it. When Li Xiaoqian picked it up, it was splashed with soy milk. Its whole body was covered in dust. It was skinny and hunched pitifully on the lawn. When the wind blew, it would tremble. As long as someone walked by, it would run away as if it was frightened. After Li Xiaoqian fed it a few times, she gradually became familiar with it. Later, she simply brought it home. Since Jiao Ma was hospitalized, Li Xiaoqian often helped to take care of her. Later, Li Xiaoqian also helped when Jiao Ma came to the hospital for a follow-up visit. In addition, Jiao Pa and Li Xiaoqian's mentor were more familiar, so Jiao Ma had a good impression of this medical school girl. She would chat with her when they met. She knew that Li Xiaoqian picked up a cat to raise. Jiao Ma even saw Dodo a few times. 2 weeks ago, Li Xiaoqian followed her mentor to study abroad. She asked Bai Yang to help raise it. Then, Bai Yang's bitter life began. In the first 2 days, Dodo was still very obedient and didn't run around. However, it completely changed after getting familiar with it. It threw the cup, scratched the sheet, and messed around everywhere. The good thing was that the cat didn't make much noise. It might be because it was castrated. It didn't run out. Even if it opened the door, it didn't run out. It was probably scared of staying outside. After Dodo was familiar with the environment, it was curious about everything in the room. It also wanted to smell the coffee that Bai Yang made. Although it didn't lick it, its whiskers touched the inside. There were also 2 short cat hairs floating on the surface of the coffee. Bai Yang really couldn't drink it. Not only that, but it also stretched out its paw to poke the coffee cup. If it wasn't for Bai Yang's quick hand, the coffee cup would have been sacrificed again. Bai Yang would be scolded by Li Xiaoqian when he broke a cup lid. This cat broke 3 cups in just 2 weeks. Li Xiaoqian didn't say anything when they were chatting online. When both of them finally had time to do an international video call, this cat even snatched the video time. As for sharpening its claws, except for the scratching board, it scratched everything else. The cat's claws could be seen on the curtains, sheets, quilt covers, sofa, clothes, and the jeans that Bai Yang was wearing now. Sleeping at night, he was woken up by the pressure in the middle of the night. The pressure on the chest could easily make people have nightmares. When Bai Yang woke up, he could see the lump on his chest. Sometimes the cat would directly get into the quilt. Not only did it get into the quilt, but it also made a lot of trouble from the head of the bed to the end of the bed, left to right. It would take a long time before it could calm down and sleep. What made Bai Yang depressed the most was F***ck, it was still lying on my lap when I watched a movie at night. How can I touch it? Even if you can, why don't you try touching it? With the cat's nature, it would definitely come over and scratch. It was said that when cats were lonely, they would take the initiative to come over and be intimate with you. It sounded beautiful, but the problem was that when it was lonely, Bai Yang was busy and disoriented. Looking at the cat that caused all kinds of trouble in front of him, Bai Yang wanted to slap it. But he couldn't slap it. He promised Li Xiaoqian that he would take good care of the cat. Li Xiaoqian said that Associate Professor Jiao's cat was well-behaved and considerate. It knew to visit Ms. Gu when she was sick and helped to pick up the children every day. Chapter 74. When Bai Yang was staring at Dodo, he suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. Who is it? Bai Yang's tone wasn't very good. There was still anger in his words when he roared at the cat just now. When he opened the door and saw the person standing at the door, Bai Yang was a little embarrassed. Teacher Gu, it's you. Please come in. Bai Yang quickly wiped the chair. The chair was crawled on by the cat. Usually he didn't wipe it when no one came. Zheng Tan came out from the bag carried by the Jiao Ma. He looked around and saw the cat squatting on the table. Teacher Gu, is this cat yours? Bai Yang handed over a cup of tea and asked. Yeah, my family's black charcoal. I lost it because of some things before. I just asked someone to help me find it a few days ago. Because her family's cat came back, the Jiao Ma had a smile on her face recently. Oh, this is black charcoal. Bai Yang looked at the black cat that jumped on a chair. Is this the black cat that Li Xiaoqian has been praising? Zheng Tan noticed Bai Yang's gaze and turned his head to look at him. When Bai Yang and Zheng Tan's gaze met, his heart skipped a beat. He always felt that the cat in front of him was a bit strange. Perhaps he was used to Dodo's antics. When he suddenly saw such a calm and even cold cat, he felt inexplicably weird. It was as if the person sitting in front of him wasn't a cat but a stranger. If Bai Yang really had to choose, he would still rather choose Dodo. If he wanted to roar when he was angry, he would just roar at it and teach it a little lesson. However, when facing this black cat, Bai Yang felt that his aura was a bit incompatible. He probably couldn't even roar at it. Zheng Tan ignored Bai Yang and turned his head to look at the cat squatting on the table again. The cat seemed to dislike strangers and unfamiliar cats, especially male ones. The gaze it looked at Zheng Tan with vigilance and strong vigilance. It was probably bullied outside. Therefore, Zheng Tan just sat on the chair and didn't go up to greet him. After wandering outside for a while, Zheng Tan was more sensitive to the psychological emotions of many people and cats. He could detect the emotional changes of others. This keen observation ability also saved Zheng Tan some trouble outside, just like Li Yuanba could distinguish who needed to be avoided and who needed to be treated with a tough attitude. Jiao Ma brought some canned cat food this time. She bought it when she went to Xiaoguo's store. Before Li Xiaoqian went abroad, Jiao Ma told her not to worry and said that she would often come over to help take care of the cats. Therefore, she kept her promise. She happened to be free this afternoon, so she brought some things over to take care of Dodo and also helped to pass on some words. Bai Yang was about to graduate, and his job hadn't been confirmed yet. Although he had several choices, Bai Yang hadn't given him a definite answer. Jiao Pa also wanted to poach Bai Yang after knowing about it. Tianyuan biology still lacked excellent management talents, so Jiao Ma also came over to mention it. Of course, it was still up to the individual whether to go or not. A forcibly picked melon isn't sweet. Jiao Ma handed an invitation letter and an explanation document that Yuan Zi sorted out to Bai Yang. After a brief discussion, she left with Zheng Tan again. After they left, Bai Yang looked at the document in his hand again and carefully put it into the drawer. He looked at Dodo, who was squatting on the edge of the table. You have to be serious when there are outsiders. Meow dash. Why? Do you have a problem with it? Bai Yang took Dodo down from the edge of the table and continued to sort out the thesis. Even if Dodo climbed onto his lap again, he didn't throw it down again. When he returned to the Eastern District compound, Zheng Tan saw Celestine standing downstairs. Speaking of which, Zheng Tan hadn't seen Celestine for a long time. Since Celestine moved to the company, they rarely met. Only occasionally when Celestine called Jiao Pa would he greet Zheng Tan. Little Wei, why are you here? Why didn't you call me when you came? You just stood here and waited, said Jiao Ma. Celestine smiled. I asked the guard. He said that you took black charcoal out. I saw that it was almost time for school to end, and you guys were coming back soon, so I didn't call you. As he said that, he looked at the black charcoal waiting in front of the door. Black charcoal, long time no see. Zheng Tan pulled his ears and hummed twice as a greeting. Still the same old, don't like to talk to people. Sigh, I was going to take you out to play, said Celestine. Jiao Ma, who was about to swipe the card to open the door, and Zheng Tan, who was about to enter, heard Celestine's words and turned their heads to look at Celestine. Cough, let's go in first. Celestine scratched his head. He could see that Jiao Ma was a little disapproving. She was probably nervous about the cat incident. Zheng Tan was very interested. After all, he had nothing to do in school all day. After wandering outside for more than a month, he was getting bolder. Little Wei, you know that black charcoal was caught. It's not easy for him to come back, and now we are all worried about him. For example, I personally brought him to the pet center for a checkup today. I didn't bother Xiaoguo, said Jiao Ma. Of course I know that. But I also told Teacher Jiao about this, said Celestine. What did he say? Jiao Ma suddenly had a bad feeling. Teacher Jiao said that it's up to black charcoal to decide on his own. Actually, Celestine didn't think that Jiao Pa would say that when he asked him. After all, who would let a cat make its own decisions? Even if this cat was different from other cats, it was still just a cat. Jiao Ma thought for a while and said, Where do you want to bring him to play? Don't worry about that. It's in the city. It's the territory of one of my buddies. We're going there so that they can recognize him. If black charcoal runs away or something happens in the future, they can help. I've asked them to look for cats before. The cat traffickers' secret transportation line was provided by them. Besides, black charcoal won't run away. I've only brought him out once before. Seeing that Jiaoma was staring at him, Celestine coughed and didn't say anything else. It wasn't good to bring the cat out without the owner's permission. Even if nothing unexpected happened after that, it was still a bad thing to act first and report later. Black charcoal, what's your decision? Jiaoma asked. She knew that her cat was different from the rest. It could understand human language, but what Celestine said made her worried. Her cat had finally come back, and it hadn't even been quiet for a few days. If it had to go out with these people again, what if it became wild? Zheng Tan, who was squatting on the coffee table, looked at the Jiaoma on his left, and then looked at Celestine on his right. He lowered his head and moved to the right, again and again. Zheng Tan didn't need to look to know that the Jiaoma must be feeling bad. However, he really didn't want to be locked up forever. After all, he was still a human and a young soul. Sometimes, he would be as lazy as a cat. He could stay in the courtyard and bask in the sun for a while, but he didn't want to be locked up here forever. He had to admit that the trip outside had stimulated his restlessness. When he was still a human, Zheng Tan liked to drive around when he was bored. Even now, he was a cat and it was the same. Jiaoma was silent for a while, and then waved her hand. It chose to do what it wants. Will it come home tonight? Don't worry about that. I'll be following it. Even if it can't come home tonight, I'll bring it back the next day. I won't leave it outside all the time. Also, I won't take it out every day, Celestine promised. Jiaoma nodded. Stay here for dinner. It's dinner time anyway. Celestine didn't stay this time. He said that he had something to do outside, and that he would come back tomorrow afternoon to pick up the cat. After Celestine left, Jiaoma called Jiaopa. The first thing she asked was about Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan didn't know what Jiaopa said. Jiaoma didn't seem to agree, but she didn't ask any more questions. At that moment, Associate Professor Jiao was sitting in his office. After hanging up the phone, he rubbed his eyebrows. He knew that Celestine must have something he needed his cat's help with. He was going to reject it, but he remembered the phone call he had with Fang Xiaokong 2 days ago. When Fang Xiaokong found out that he had a company with Yuan Ziyi and a few others, he also helped a little and promoted a business deal. With third young Master Fang as the middleman, the other party gave Tianyuan Biotech a lot of face, and the two parties quickly reached a cooperation agreement. Yuan Ziyi was excited for a long time. The company's development was faster than Yuan Ziyi had expected, and it was much smoother. And the accelerator was a cat. After that, Yuan Ziyi even wanted to come over and worship the cat, but Jiao Pa rejected him. It was better not to let everyone know about this. Before Fang Xiaokong left Chuhua, he gave Associate Professor Jiao a call. The two talked about Zheng Tan. Before hanging up, Fang Xiaokong said, "Don't always restrain your cat. Black charcoal is destined to be uncontrollable, and it's not something an ordinary person can control. Your cat is very smart. Loosen your grip. Who knows, it might give you a big surprise." Associate Professor Jiao didn't care if it was a surprise or not. He only wanted his cat to be healthy. The next day, Zheng Tan was lying on a tree branch in the courtyard, taking a nap. In the morning, he wandered around the courtyard, but he was bored, so he ran around the campus. In the afternoon, he had nothing to do, so he could only lie there and recharge his energy. Celestine said that he would take him out tonight. After dinner, Celestine arrived. In this month, the sky was still bright after dinner. Zheng Tan followed Celestine downstairs. Celestine didn't ride his motorcycle this time. Instead, he drove a small car that didn't look like much. However, even if it didn't look good, it was still a four-wheeled car. It was much better than being carried in a backpack while riding the motorcycle. "I borrowed this car from someone. Don't shit on the seat." Celestine sat in the driver's seat and said to Zheng Tan, who was squatting in the back seat. Chapter 75. Sitting in the back seat, Zheng Tan looked at the scenery outside the car window to determine the route Celestine was taking. Zheng Tan knew that he wasn't very smart, but his memory was good. He still remembered the route he took in Fang Xiaokong's car last time. Connecting that to the city map, Zheng Tan could roughly guess where the destination was. Although it wasn't the center of the city, it was still in a bustling area. It was different from the bustling area around Tsinghua University. This area was truly a commercial area. The area around Tsinghua University was mostly occupied by students. But here, most of the people were office workers. Most of them were white-collar workers and successful people. Most of the rich people in Tsinghua City were also concentrated in this area. The car drove on the main road and stopped for a while at a red light. Zheng Tan looked at the road sign outside the car window. The name of the street on the sign was familiar. He looked at the surrounding towering buildings and was attracted by the big Shaoguang Hotel sign. Damn, isn't this the hotel marked on the membership card that third Uncle Fang gave me? Zheng Tan moved closer to the car window to take a look. He didn't know much about design and couldn't describe the characteristics of this building. But looking at this hotel, he felt that the sharpness and coldness of the city that was piled up by steel and cement had softened a lot. It had a bit of the freshness of a rising star, but it didn't lose the domineering aura of a rising star. It was obvious that Fang Xiaokong must have spent a lot of effort on the design of this building. While Zheng Tan was looking at the building outside the window, Celestine turned his head to look at Zheng Tan and said, "The Shaoguang Hotel is just outside. I heard that you have a good relationship with the third Master Fang?" Third Master Fang? Fang Xiaokong sure had a lot of nicknames. But it wasn't a good relationship. They had a lot of performing together. Celestine didn't expect a cat to answer his question. He had heard a lot of rumors about Fang Xiaokong. He was a legendary person, but also an unpredictable person. Celestine always felt that the third Master Fang was like a cat. It was hard to guess what he would think or do next. Maybe the brain of a genius was different from that of a normal person? Celestine shook his head. The green light was already on, so he continued to drive. When they arrived at their destination, the sky was already dark. The surrounding streets were lit, ready to welcome the people out at night. Celestine drove the car to a large bar. He parked the car in the parking lot. Then he brought Zheng Tan out. It wouldn't be good to enter through the front door. According to the rules, pets were not allowed to enter. But if Celestine wanted to bring a pet, the people guarding the door wouldn't really stop him. However, Celestine knew that this wasn't good. He didn't want to enter through the front door. He called out to Zheng Tan and prepared to enter through the side door. There was a door on the side for internal personnel. The people guarding there were actually stricter than the people at the front door. They were also much more skilled. After Zheng Tan got out of the car, she looked at the bar in front of her. Although she hadn't entered, Zheng Tan seemed to have felt the explosive and hot atmosphere inside. She thought that she would never be able to return to that kind of life and would never be able to set foot in such a place again. Every time he saw those bars, even if it was just a small one, he could recall the life of luxury. Looking back, it was like yesterday. Not everyone who came to the bar was like Zheng Tan in the past. Bars weren't necessarily associated with depravity and decadence. With the rapid development of the economy, the consumption level of the city was getting higher and higher. Most people clearly felt that the burden on their shoulders was getting heavier and heavier. With the popularity of fashion and the change of social ethos, the local bars gradually became the new favorite of the young people. At the same time, they gradually became the new entertainment and relaxation places. After a busy day, there would always be unsatisfactory work, unsatisfactory career, emotional and other pressures that would increase people's burden. Those would always make people feel tired and numb. Every time this happened, many people would invite a few friends to go to the bar together. For a short period of self-indulgence, they would vent the pressure in their hearts and learn to release. They would temporarily put aside the work reports and the deception and make life more colorful. Zheng Tan looked up at the large bar. It wasn't at the front, so he couldn't see the sign on the front. However, there was also a sign on the side of the roof. Night Building, Yeklub. Compared to its English name, Zheng Tan still felt that the name Night Building sounded better. Many times, the English and Chinese names didn't necessarily have the same meaning. Different people had different understandings. Since the owner of this bar chose these two names, he must have his reasons. Night Building was located in Tsinghua City, a bustling area with countless white-collar elites. There were also many salaried people around, so it was inevitable that business would be good every day. Convenient transportation also allowed all customers to arrive here smoothly. It wasn't limited to the population of the area. As for whether it could retain customers, it depended on night building's means. However, Zheng Tan saw that the parking lot was almost full. Many people were surging here before the sky was completely dark. The popularity of this bar was indeed good. Groups of people walked over from the street one after another. Zheng Tan looked at those people with some envy, but he didn't expect to suddenly see a familiar figure. Zheng Tan's senses were now very sharp. He also believed in his own judgment. Even if the figure across the street was blocked by people walking past, Zheng Tan could still capture the image. Looking at the figure, Zheng Tan was sure that he definitely knew the person. As for who it was, Zheng Tan wasn't sure. In order to figure it out, Zheng Tan ignored Celestine's greeting and walked across the street. Seeing that the cat ignored him and walked out, Celestine cursed in a low voice and lifted his feet to follow. At this time, everyone was only looking at the brightly lit building and their destination. They didn't pay attention to whether there was a cat around, let alone a black cat. Under such visual conditions, it wasn't easy to notice. Besides, no one would think that there would be a cat walking around in this place at this time. Zheng Tan looked at the cars coming and going. Taking advantage of the slight gap between the cars, he rushed to the other side of the street, opposite Night Building. Directly opposite the door of Night Building on the other side of the street, there was a person squatting under the lamppost. He seemed to be very young. The man held a cigarette in his hand, but he rarely took a puff. His eyes were fixed on the Night Building across the street. His eyes were filled with yearning and confusion, and his whole body was filled with a sense of disappointment. Everyone had seen a lot of people like this. In the commercial city, there were a lot of people who had failed to achieve their goals or were full of ambition. After climbing to a high position, they were mercilessly slapped down to the ground and suffered so much that they wished they were dead. There were a lot of people like this in the city every day. The people around them were already used to it. Even if a person was dead drunk and fell on the side of the road, no one would care. When the sanitation workers swept the floor in the morning, they would just calmly sweep past him with a big broom. This was the indifference of the bustling metropolis, the social norm under the cruel reality. The young man with the blue stubble put his hand that was not holding the cigarette into his hair and pushed his hair back. He knew what he looked like now. He had no image to speak of. His hair was like a chicken's nest, and he had not bathed for a few days. His body smelled. He remembered the dirty stray dog with its tail between its legs when he went to buy breakfast in the morning. Its fur was yellow, but it was not the kind of yellow that was golden. It had the color of dead leaves, and the knotted long hair with some mud drooped down messily, covering its eyes. It looked at the people around it who were hurrying around and would hide to the side with its tail between its legs. When it ran, it was obvious that it was limping. When it stopped, it would look at the people walking around, as if it was looking for something or looking forward to something. He remembered that when he pushed away the hair that almost covered the dog's eyes from its forehead, he saw a pair of eyes. With expectation and pleading, it was so piercing that he did not even have the courage to look at it for a second more. In the end, he only left a small bun with little meat and ran away in embarrassment. He was afraid that he would become like this stray dog. It was just that the stray dog still had a bun from him, but what about himself? Perhaps, the way he looked now was the original taste of being a stray. Did he make the wrong choice? He did not know the immensity of heaven and earth, and he had hit his head until it was bleeding. Should he turn back? But he was really not reconciled. The young man was thinking with his head down when he suddenly felt the cigarette in his hand being pushed. He looked up and saw a pair of black cat claws. He looked up again and saw a pair of cat eyes with curiosity. Blinking, the young man was stunned for a few seconds. Apparently, he had not recovered from his contemplation. After he finally reacted, he was puzzled again. They had passed through several big cities and seen many black cats. Those cats were only similar in appearance but not in spirit. However, the cat in front of him was real. It was very similar to a certain idiot who knocked on the bottle. Was his eyes playing tricks on him? Was he hallucinating because he did not eat dinner and his brain was not supplying enough energy? Black charcoal. Why are you running around? If something really happens to you, how am I going to explain it to your cat parents? Wei Ling walked over angrily. He was so scared when he saw the cat crossing the road that he broke out in a cold sweat. Damn, Black Charcoal, it's really you. The young man's eyes flashed with surprise, and the gloominess from his contemplation faded a little. Oh, you know him? Celestine looked at the sloppy young man squatting on the ground and looked at Jing Tan. Jing Tan ignored Celestine. He was just curious about how Ajin made himself look like this. Where were the other 4 people? Where did they go? Didn't they say that they had formed a band and the 5 of them acted together? I saw him once more than 20 days ago, and he did us a big favor. Hey, is that Mr. Fong not here? Ajin looked around and made sure that he did not see Mr. Fong with the SLR camera. Celestine raised his eyebrows. More than 20 days ago. At that time, the cat was still outside. It seemed to be with the 3rd Master Fong? Okay, don't stay here. Let's find a place to sit down and talk. Celestine called Zheng Tan and waved to Ajin, indicating that he should follow. Where are we going? Ajin hurriedly threw the cigarette butt in his hand into the trash can 1 meter away and asked. Celestine pointed to the opposite night building. There. Ajin staggered and directly knelt down. He almost knelt down in front of Zheng Tan and Celestine. Zheng Tan. Should I put 3 more incense sticks? Young man, you really don't have to do this. Celestine said. Chapter 76. Although it was true that his legs were numb from squatting for too long, Ajin was indeed surprised. He was not surprised that Celestine said he wanted to enter the night building. There were many people who went to the night building, so there was nothing to be surprised about. What he was surprised about was that the other parties seemed to want to bring a cat in. Could a cat enter a bar? It was the dignified night building. In the past few days, Ajin had come here almost every night. He squatted across the street and watched the people on the street go in. He watched the invited bands go in, and then squatted outside in a daze until someone came out. He heard which band or singer people were talking about when they came out. This made Ajin envious. He always thought that one day he could also become the topic of these people's discussion. However, now they could not even enter a small bar, let alone the famous night building. It was only a street away, but it was like a natural chasm. However, Ajin did not expect that a moment ago, it was a natural chasm, and the next moment he was told that he could go in with them. Well, no matter what the other party's purpose was, it was worth it to have a chance to see the night building. Ajin followed Celestine and Zheng Tan across the street and then walked in from the side door. This surprised Ajin. After seeing Celestine, the person guarding the side door called out, "Brother Ling," and then looked at Ajin curiously. This was a new face. He looked quite young and down. He really could not understand why Celestine would bring such a person in. However, no matter what they thought in their hearts, they would definitely not ask verbally. They just needed to do their job well and did not ask about other things. As for Zheng Tan, the person guarding the door only thought that he was a pet brought by Celestine and did not care at all. With the relationship between Celestine and his boss, this was not a problem at all. Brother Ling, when Zheng Tan followed Celestine to the corner, a person came from the corridor. He looked similar to those white-collar elites and wore gold-rimmed glasses, which also made him look gentler. The man had a badge in front of his chest. Zheng Tan didn't know what the pattern on the badge meant, but he could tell that the man was a manager. In fact, Zheng Tan was a little curious as to why those people called Celestine Brother Ling and not Brother Wei. What Zheng Tan didn't know was that when Celestine was called Brother Wei once, the person had a local accent, so it sounded like Brother Wei. Because of this, he was laughed at by Yi Hao for a long time. Since then, Celestine had an idea to not let people call him Brother Wei in the future, but Brother Ling. Ranchi? You're the one watching the show this time, Celestine said. Well, Brother Hao had something to do at the last minute, so he left with Leopard. He said that if Brother Ling came over, he would let me entertain you. The man named Ranchi glanced at Ajin, who was standing behind Celestine. His eyes were suspicious, but he didn't say much. He led the 2 people and the cat upstairs. The 3rd floor was a top-secret VIP area. Only people with special permission could enter. There were many private rooms here. Obviously, it wasn't the first time Celestine came here. There was a private room here for Celestine and others, so Ranchi didn't ask too much and directly led them there. Ajin seemed a little restrained. After wandering for so long, he still had a little bit of knowledge. No matter what the identity of the two people in front of him was, they were certainly not people that he could provoke. The strangest thing was that in addition to these two people, there was also a mysterious cat. No matter how he looked at it, it was strange. Sit down, don't be restrained. Celestine patted the leather sofa next to him and said to Ajin. He didn't care that Ajin's clothes were already a little dirty. Ranchi wouldn't say anything. He was just accompanying the guests now. However, Ranchi also felt strange. Why would Celestine bring such a person here? With Ranchi's eyesight, this young man was definitely not from the underworld, and he wouldn't have the same background as Celestine. Although Celestine had just explained that he brought him here at the last minute, with Ranchi's understanding of Celestine, Celestine must be trying to get information from him now. He just didn't know what this young man knew that could make Celestine so interested. Celestine and Ajin were talking, and Zheng Tan didn't care about them. He walked around the private room, and his evaluation of this private room was not bad. After walking around, Zheng Tan jumped on the solid wood tea table in front of the sofa. There were some snacks on the plate. Zheng Tan had already eaten. He sniffed and didn't have any appetite. Bored, he continued to look at the layout of the private room and found that it could also be used as a KTV. Zheng Tan was very regretful. If he was still the same as before, he would definitely sing. Unfortunately, he was just a cat now. Ranchi didn't speak, but he was paying attention to Ajin. At the same time, he didn't stop looking at the black cat. What did Celestine mean by bringing a black cat here? From Zheng Tan circling around the room to jumping on the solid wood table, Ranchi had been paying attention until Celestine signaled him to serve some wine. Ajin, you are still young. Ranchi, get someone to prepare a lower alcohol content bar. When Celestine said this, his fingers moved twice. Ranchi looked at Celestine, nodded slightly, and turned to leave. Zheng Tan noticed the subtle movements of these two people. He knew that Celestine wouldn't be so kind as to bring people in. Zheng Tan was quite doubtful about the authenticity of the so-called lower alcohol content. Although Ajin was still very young, he had been outside for so long after all, so he still had some vigilance. Celestine didn't ask too much and was ready to change his strategy. Brother Ling, are you still following the old rules? Ranchi turned around and asked when he walked to the door. Same old rules. Celestine didn't raise his head and said. After getting the information he wanted, Ranchi directly opened the door and went out. Zheng Tan looked at the closed door and was a little unhappy. He hadn't made a choice yet, and he had already left? Ajin still didn't say much. He sat there cautiously looking out of place. Celestine didn't continue to ask. He walked to a wall and pressed a button on the wall. The wall moved to the side, revealing a window. At the same time, there was also a passionate sound coming from below. When Ajin heard the music, his eyes lit up. He sat up from the sofa and went to the window to look out. Zheng Tan also jumped to the window curiously. Through the window, Zheng Tan could see the scene below. It should be some area on the first floor for the public to pass time. There were some wine tables on the side, and people came and went. There was a round stage in the center, on which a band was performing. This is the legendary East Palace of the Night Building? Ajin was a little excited. Ajin heard that the Night Building had 4 areas, which were divided into the East, West, South, and North Palaces. The North Palace was the most ordinary and also the place with the lowest cost. The resident singer there was much worse than the other 3 areas. The West and South Palaces were of a higher grade and had different styles. As for the East Palace, it was the most superior existence in the whole 4 areas of the Night Building. Some well-known bands and singers would often come here to perform. This was the most desirable place in the whole Night Building. However, not everyone could enter the East Palace, and the cost was not something ordinary people could afford. Seeing Ajin's expression, Celestine smiled. Yes, how do you feel? Great. Ajin looked at the band performing in the center of the stage below. He was envious but definitely not jealous. The gap between their strength was there, and he could only look up to them, as if he was looking at an idol. Celestine opened the window so that the people in the room could hear the performance below more clearly. The live version was always easier to stimulate the nerves and affect the mood to cause resonance, especially for people like Ajin. Zheng Tan looked at Ajin's eyes and knew that this guy's vigilance was probably lowered a lot. Shaking his head, Zheng Tan didn't know much about this place, and he couldn't appreciate the performance of those bands. He used to go to the bar for fun and to release himself. As for who was singing, which band was performing, and whether there was a famous DJ, he didn't have the mood to observe. Hearing Ajin's words, the area below was quite high-end. While he was thinking, Ran Qi pushed a small cart in. Zheng Tan felt strange. Wasn't it just some wine? Why did he push a cart in? When Ran Qi took out the wine from a box in the cart, Zheng Tan felt like he was stuck by a fish bone. Red Star Erguotu. Damn, Celestine actually wanted to drink Erguotu in a place like this? And it was the kind with a very ordinary packaging on the outside. Fortunately, Ran Qi just handed the Erguotu to Celestine and gave a cocktail to Ajin. Then, he took out 2 bottles of red wine and placed them on the solid wood coffee table. The remaining bottles of red wine were placed in the wine cabinet in the room. After drinking a glass of wine and Celestine's persuasion, Ajin began to talk freely. Zheng Tan finally knew why he only saw Ajin. It was because the other 4 people were in the hospital. 3 of them were lying in the hospital bed, and 1 was taking care of them. Almost all the money they had was spent on the hospital. In this strange city, they had no friends, no relatives, and no backing. As outsiders, they would definitely be beaten up if they had a conflict with people in the bar. Some things couldn't be avoided if they wanted to. Taking a step back might not be a good thing. During the day, Ajin took care of them in the hospital for most of the day. At night, he went out for a walk and thought about it carefully to find a way to solve the current problem. After all, life still had to go on. As the captain, he had to shoulder the burden. At the same time, Celestine also got what he wanted to know about the 3rd Master Feng. Celestine felt that he seemed to have found out something incredible. The dignified chairman of the Shaoguang group actually went to sing. And he was selling it with a cat. If this got out, the Feng family would probably have the idea of silencing him. As Wei Ling listened, he opened a bottle of red wine and filled Ajin's glass. He picked up a small bottle of Red Star Erguotu and drank it. While Celestine was trying to get information, Ran Qi had nothing to do. He opened a bottle of wine and poured himself a glass. He sat next to him and drank with his head lowered. At the same time, he was thinking about how to solve the problem that his boss had mentioned recently. As he was drinking, he found that a wine glass was pushed in front of him. Looking up, Ran Qi saw the black cat squatting on the solid wood coffee table. Zheng Tan couldn't stand it anymore. If he didn't take the initiative, he would probably be completely ignored. So, he pushed an empty wine glass to Ran Qi. The man and the cat stared at each other for half a minute before Ran Qi looked away and looked at Celestine. Celestine just glanced over and didn't pay any more attention. It seemed that he was not going to care. Ran Qi looked at the cat in front of him again. The cat's paw knocked on the wine glass as if urging him. Ran Qi was happy. He pulled out the cork and added some wine to the glass pushed over. Chapter 77. When Zheng Tan put its head into the red wine glass, it found that the rim of the glass was still a little small. It could only pull its ears back, or else it would feel uncomfortable with its ears stuck in the rim of the glass. It had to pull its ears when drinking wine. It was better when it was a human. Zheng Tan put its head into the glass and drank while thinking, the tip of its tail wagging. Ran Qi was curious. A cat could drink? It was the first time he had seen it. Ran Qi had heard from a friend that his cat could drink wine, but his cat would rather die than submit. It just wouldn't open its mouth. Later, he put some wine on the cat, and the cat would lick its fur. After a lick, it would stick out its tongue and shake its head for a long time. After a while, it would lick its fur again. In the end, the cat directly fell asleep. When the friend brought the cat to the vet, he was severely criticized by the vet because many cats were allergic to alcohol. If they drank too much, it could lead to poisoning or even death. This kind of joke could not be made. But Ran Qi looked at Celestine again. Celestine was inquiring about the details of the third Master Fang's performance. It was listening enthusiastically and laughing. It was not afraid of being hunted down by the fangs. Occasionally, it glanced over and saw that the cat was drinking. Celestine also wanted to stop it. Celestine was not worried, but Ranqi was. If something really happened, he would definitely be responsible. He did not think that the cat in front of him was just an ordinary cat. Otherwise, Celestine would not have brought it here. Even if Celestine did not restrain the cat, he was still watching it all the time, afraid that something would happen to the cat. It was a headache. Would the cat have diarrhea after drinking? Would it vomit after drinking? Should he ask someone to get a vet to prepare it first? Ranqi's thoughts had just turned when he heard the sound of the cat's paw knocking on the glass again. He looked up and saw the black cat on the solid wood coffee table staring at him again. The wine in the glass had been finished. However, Ranqi did not pour the wine so quickly this time. He was still hesitating. Zheng Tan had just tasted a little of the wine and missed the days of the past. He praised the wine in his heart, but now the person in front of him was not going to pour the wine? How could this be? He raised his paw and knocked on the wine glass again. This time, he knocked harder and more hurriedly. It was obvious that he was urging them to drink. Ranqi looked at the cat in front of him. He did not expect this cat to be so different. Was it an alcoholic? It shouldn't be on a whim. Zheng Tan knocked on the glass and pushed it towards Ranqi. If he pushed it again, it would fall off the coffee table. Ranqi sighed in his heart. He moved the wine glass a little further in. Then, he pulled out the cork and poured a little more wine into the glass. It was a little more than before. Putting down the bottle, Ranqi looked at the cat in front of him. With such a small body, this should be the limit. Zheng Tan did not try to guess what Ranqi was thinking. After seeing that there was wine in the glass, he put his head in to drink again. After drinking, he continued to stare at Ranqi until Ranqi poured him another glass. After drinking the third glass, Zheng Tan felt a little full. He wanted to pee, so he jumped off the coffee table and ran to the bathroom. There was a separate bathroom in the private room. Zheng Tan came to the bathroom door, jumped up and turned the door handle. After opening the door, he did not forget to close the door. Ranqi, who had been paying attention to Zheng Tan's movements, was stunned. Coincidentally, Celestine was also looking at him. Ranqi said, "Brother Ling, this cat, don't worry about it. It knows what to do," Celestine said calmly. Ranqi was speechless. How was this cat trained? It was really strange. After Zheng Tan came out, Ranqi deliberately ran to the bathroom to check. He found that even the toilet had been flushed, and there were no traces of cat urine around. The faucet had been turned on, and the toilet paper had been used. There were a few black cat fur stuck to the paper ball thrown into the basket. Thinking of the two wet front paws when the cat walked out, Ranqi felt that he was thinking too much. How could a cat wash its hands and then wipe its hands with toilet paper? Ranqi did not know that originally, Zheng Tan was going to use a hand dryer, but it was not convenient, so he just simply wiped his hands with toilet paper. The private room was covered with a carpet, and the wet footprints were not obvious. When Ranqi came out of the bathroom, he frowned. He probably had not figured it out yet. Ajin also drank a little too much. Celestine asked him what he wanted to know. Looking at Ajin, who was sitting there in a daze, Celestine closed the window wall, and the room immediately calmed down. He turned on the equipment, took out the microphone, and handed it to Ajin. Celestine said, "Try it?" Ajin was not very sober now, but singing had become a natural thing. When he saw the microphone, he unconsciously took it. When he heard the accompaniment, he began to sing. Whatever Celestine said, he would sing. If he really did not know how to sing, he would just say it and let him skip. In fact, Celestine also wanted to help Ajin. After all, he had heard some stupid deeds of the third Master Fang from this person. For the sake of black charcoal, he could help him a little. Young people, giving them a little hope could make them come out of despair. Now, he asked Ajin to sing just to see this person's singing skills. Although he did not know much about singing, Celestine often came here and listened to many songs. He could also distinguish some good and bad. Ajin's singing was not bad, but it was not enough. After some training, he would at most be able to make a living in the northern district. As for what he could achieve by then, it would depend on himself, or rather, the ability of his small band. In the night building, being able to sing in which district depended entirely on one's own ability. In the bar, the resident singer had to learn how to drive the atmosphere. He also had to be smart enough to sing the right song for the right occasion. He also had to have a certain ability to socialize and adapt. Celestine already had a rough idea of these problems when he was talking to Ajin just now. Although Ajin was not good enough, he believed that he could cope with it after some practice. Besides, it was impossible to let them sing directly now. Even the people in the North District of the night building had been arranged. Celestine would not forcibly interfere. When the time came, he would first greet them and let Yihao's people help to arrange it. Just as Ajin sang enthusiastically and Celestine was thinking, Zheng Tan took another microphone from Celestine's hand and began to howl. Zheng Tan felt that he did not drink much, but with his current small body, this amount of alcohol was enough to make him drunk. It was still fine earlier, but now that the alcohol had kicked in, Zheng Tan walked in an S shape. After Zheng Tan heard Ajin sing, he suddenly had the idea of singing. After getting drunk, Zheng Tan staggered and seemed to see the shaking car with many cat cages. The scene changed, and he seemed to see himself hiding in the dusty attic to avoid the cat catchers. In order not to look like a stray cat, he jumped into the fish pond to take a cold bath, fought with a Persian cat for a pet tag, and was chased and beaten while waiting for the bus. The scene changed again, and Zheng Tan seemed to be lying on a bus again, listening to the driver frantically honking the horn, the sharp friction between the tires and the ground, and the driver's cursing with a local accent. When he turned on the lights, the vehicles on the road flowed like blood, and everything around him seemed to become fierce. Zheng Tan, on the other hand, was communicating with the world in sign language every day. Suddenly, he also wanted to sing loudly and without restraint. Therefore, when Zheng Tan saw the other microphone near Celestine, he went over and took it in his arms. 10 o'clock in the evening, Tsinghua University's Dongjia district. Jiao family. The Jiao Pa and the Jiao Ma were not sleeping. After all, this was the first time that their cat had been taken out for a long time. Even though they knew that Celestine was watching over the cat, they were still worried. They could have called to explain. While they were thinking, the phone in the bedroom rang. The Jiao Pa, who was close to the phone, quickly reached out and picked it up. However, the moment the call was connected, a series of iconic howls came from the other side of the phone. The Jiao couple, who were about to ask a series of questions, fell silent for a while. When the phone became quiet, the Jiao Pa asked, "What's going on over there?" "Black Charcoal is drunk. He's howling right now. I'm in the bathroom." "It's quieter here," Celestine said. "You're giving him alcohol?" the Jiao Ma said angrily. The Jiao Ma wanted to grab the phone and say something, but was comforted by the Jiao Pa. He asked about the specific situation over there. After a brief explanation, Celestine walked out of the bathroom and went to the sofa. He asked Ranqi to turn off the sound system, then put the phone next to Zheng Tan, who was still howling. Hearing the howling on the other side of the phone, the Jiao Pa was sure that it was his cat, and it was very energetic and full of energy. However, compared to before, his cat's howling was scarier and more unscrupulous this time. It was out of control. "Black Charcoal," the Jiao Ma grabbed the phone and called a few times. Zheng Tan was howling. It was a bit strange. Without the accompaniment, it became quieter. Then it heard the voice from the phone, and the howling became softer. "Black Charcoal isn't coming back?" It was little Pomelo. "Mom, where is Black Charcoal?" It was Jiao Yuan. The two kids were still awake. When they heard the phone ring, they immediately kicked the quilt away and tiptoed to their parents' room. They put their ears against the door to make sure it was about their cat, then knocked and came in. Their voices were also transmitted to Zheng Tan's ears through the phone. It wasn't loud, but Zheng Tan could still hear it. "Good boys, go to sleep. Black Charcoal is karaoke with someone," the Jiao Pa said to them. On the other side, Zheng Tan tilted his head and thought for a while with his muddled brain. Yes, he was no longer a vagrant. He could go home when he was tired. The small yard, the old building, and the crowded small attic. Thinking of this, his mood suddenly became better. Celestine and Ranqi watched the cat on the sofa stop howling, then suddenly howl again. It became more excited. The hysterical voice that crossed 2 octaves but was not in tune at all made Celestine and Ranqi want to bang their heads against the wall. They were now very envious of Ajin, who was already drunk and asleep. That way, they wouldn't have to endure this kind of torture. Without the equipment on, without the accompaniment, and without the microphone working, this cat could still howl so loudly. For this reason, Celestine and Ranqi made a decision at the same time. They would never give this cat alcohol in the future. The evils brought on by oneself were the hardest to bear. Celestine wanted to go out for a while, but he was afraid that Zheng Tan would do something unexpected. Since he had promised the Jiao family, he had to watch. Ranqi, on the other hand, wanted to take the microphone out of Zheng Tan's arms several times, thinking that without the microphone, the cat wouldn't howl. But before his hand could touch the microphone, his hand was scratched. Instead of scratching his hand, it was his sleeves that were damaged. The sleeves of the suit that he had bought less than 2 days ago were torn by the cat. He wanted to sneak out, but Celestine stopped him and said something about sharing weal and woe. Share weal and woe my ass. Chapter 78. The people behind Yi Hao quickly moved in front of him, but were stopped by Yi Hao. The people who followed Yi Hao to this floor were all trustworthy people, and the people who followed Yi Hao were all his confidants. For example, the person in front of Yi Hao at this moment was Leopard with a crew cut. Leopard only knew that this place had always been Celestine's private area, and the person in charge today was Ranqi. These 2 people were not people who would make this kind of noise. As for the young man that Celestine had brought over, he had never seen him before, so he could not comment. However, this kind of noise was really too despairing. Leopard did not expect Zheng Tan. Although the gatekeeper had said that Celestine had brought a cat, he had never heard of a cat making this kind of noise, nor did he think that a cat could do such a shocking thing. Seeing Yi Hao raise his hand, Leopard also stepped aside, but his eyes were still focused on the inside, afraid that something strange would suddenly jump out. As the door gradually opened, the sound from the room echoed throughout the corridor on the 3rd floor. The people guarding the 2 ends of the corridor felt their hair stand on end. They glanced over, then quickly looked away. It was about their boss, so it was better for them not to be curious. Yi Hao and Leopard quickly entered the door, then closed it. The corridor on the 3rd floor suddenly became quiet again, as if the howling had never happened. The people on the 3rd floor were all wondering what had happened in the room. After Yi Hao entered the room, he saw the source of the noise at first glance. A black cat was lying on the sofa, sitting like a person, leaning against the sofa, holding a microphone in its arms. Fortunately, Ranqi had turned off all the sound equipment, or else the sound from the moment the door opened would have been even more terrifying, and he would have had to increase the amplification and background music. There was another person lying on the sofa, probably drunk too much and asleep. This should be the young man that Celestine had brought in. As for Celestine, he was wearing a large headset, sitting on a chair next to the sofa with a secretive look on his face. Ranqi, on the other hand, was sitting in the corner, with one elbow on his leg, his head tilted, and one hand on his forehead. The other hand was hanging by his side, holding his glasses. There were many scratches and holes on his sleeves, and a few were already torn. Leopard knew about Ranqi's newly bought suit, and heard that it cost a few thousand yuan, but tonight, the suit was scrapped. Ranqi pinched his eyebrows, and felt the door open. He looked up, and after seeing Yi Hao and Leopard, Ranqi looked as if he had seen his father. He immediately jumped up from the chair and ran to Yi Hao, saying, "Brother Hao, I'll leave the rest to you, I'll go check out the place." Ranqi was about to sneak out, but Yi Hao grabbed him by the collar and dragged him back into the room. Yi Hao still didn't understand the situation, but seeing Celestine and Ranqi's helpless look, he knew that the situation was tricky. Want to sneak out? Not so easy. Ranqi helplessly explained the situation, and Leopard asked curiously, "Did it really drink that much? I've never seen a cat drink before." "Now you've seen it." Ranqi pointed at Zheng Tan on the sofa. Yi Hao didn't say anything, and looked at Celestine. Celestine just shrugged, indicating that he couldn't do anything. Walking to the sofa, Yi Hao looked at the cat in front of him. When he heard his subordinate's report, He knew that Wei Lin must have brought this black cat over. Because of its capture, there were some changes in Chuhua City, both overt and covert. So many people were mobilized to find this black cat. In the past, no matter what Celestine said, Yi Hao thought that Celestine was exaggerating, but now that he saw the cat, Yi Hao suddenly felt that Celestine actually underestimated the cat's ability. It was probably the only cat that could drink and still be immersed in its own world and howl like this. Although Zheng Tan was very drunk ever since he became a vagrant, his vigilance had increased a lot. When the door opened, he felt a strange presence, so he was a little absent-minded when he howled. Now that a stranger walked in front of him, he had to pay attention. Stopping howling, Zheng Tan looked at the person in front of him. A man and a cat stared at each other. Yi Hao was looking at the cat in front of him, and Zheng Tan's mind wasn't very clear, and he was a little confused in his vigilance. The noise in the room finally quieted down, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. The howling was too scary, and it made people's nerves unconsciously tense. Now that it was quiet, they felt much more relaxed. After looking at the person in front of him for more than 10 seconds, Zheng Tan's remaining consciousness confirmed that he didn't know the person in front of him. He threw the microphone in his hand at the person, turned around, and walked to the side. Yi Hao raised his hand to catch the microphone that was thrown at him, and he was surprised. This cat threw the microphone with a lot of strength, and it didn't seem like an ordinary cat could have. If someone had reacted slower, they would have been hit by the microphone. After venting out the surging passion as well as all the depression and emotions that had been bottled up in her heart, Zheng Tan calmed down and felt dizzy. She wanted to sleep. That last bit of consciousness made Zheng Tan notice that Celestine was next to him, and he knew that Celestine had promised the Jiaoma to keep him safe. Therefore, he knew that he could sleep now, and he didn't need to worry about anything else. Celestine would take care of everything. Another thing that made Zheng Tan unhappy was that when he was about to go to sleep, he found another person lying on the sofa. He didn't remember that Ajin was here at all. He sniffed, and the smell was not unfamiliar, but also not familiar. He was sure that it wasn't someone from the Jiao family. Zheng Tan walked over, lifted his foot, and kicked Ajin, who was sleeping on the sofa, off the sofa. He walked around the sofa, and when he felt that the sofa was spacious enough, he lay down in the middle of the sofa and adjusted his position to make himself more comfortable. The room was silent. Ajin, who had been kicked off the sofa, was still asleep. Maybe it was because the floor was covered with carpet, so it didn't hurt. Even if it hurt, Ajin was so drunk that it was unlikely that he would wake up. The 4 people in the room, including Celestine, were shocked by Zheng Tan's actions. Celestine knew that this cat was stronger than ordinary cats, but he didn't expect it to be so strong that it could directly kick Ajin off the sofa. Even his master's cat wouldn't be able to do that, right? As for Yi Hao, Ranqi, and Leopard, all kinds of guesses and ideas began to emerge in their minds. God? Cat demon? Monster? Mutant? Or a secret weapon of a special department? This cat. Yi Hao pointed at the black cat lying in the middle of the sofa and looked at Celestine. Celestine waved his hand. It's just a little special. Just keep it to yourself. Don't tell anyone. What the F***ck, was this just a little special? Ranqi looked at Ajin, who had been kicked to the floor, and then looked at his sleeves, regretting. If he had known that this cat was special, he wouldn't have blindly grabbed the microphone and ruined his suit. Yi Hao dragged a chair over, lit a cigarette, and took 2 puffs. After a moment of silence, he said, "You mean we can ask this cat for help with that matter?" "That's an idea." Celestine nodded. From the moment he brought the cat to the night building and entered the private room, Celestine had seen the movements of the black cat and Ranqi. He brought the cat over because he really did hope that the cat could be of help, and also because he hoped that the cat could be more familiar with Ranqi and the others. These people were all people that Celestine trusted. Yi Hao was a buddy that he grew up with, and Leopard and Ranqi were Yi Hao's confidants. They had been with Yi Hao for a long time. If the 2 parties could be familiar with each other, even if the cat was in trouble in the future, Celestine, Yi Tao, and the others wouldn't be in Chuhua City for the time being, or if they couldn't free themselves to help, they could ask these people to help. After all, in the city, the ones that caused trouble for cats were mostly people. If he could make Yi Hao owe him a favor, this cat could also have more protection. However, whether this cat will agree to cooperate or not, we'll have to wait until it wakes up. I've already called its family. We'll let it sleep here tonight and ask for its opinion tomorrow, Celestine said. If Celestine had said this before tonight, Ronchi and Leopard wouldn't have believed that the cat could help solve that matter. But now they kept silent. At the same time, they were also curious about the cooperation that Celestine mentioned. Also, Celestine raised his head, his face more serious. About this cat, I hope that everyone can keep it a secret. Of course, I understand. Yi Hao tilted his head. Leopard and Ronchi behind him immediately said, "We know, Brother Ling. We definitely won't tell anyone." After Celestine agreed, he turned his attention to Aujin, who was lying on the floor and didn't know anything. He shook his head and said to Yi Hao, "This child and the cat are quite fated. They have a band, and they are all underage children. When the time comes, let them come here first to familiarize themselves with it and learn." Without being too specific, Yi Hao knew the general meaning of Celestine's words. "Okay, Ronchi, you arrange it when the time comes." "Okay, Brother Hao," Ronchi replied. After finishing the matter, Celestine changed the topic and talked about the third Master Fang's performance. "So, it may not be bad for you to have a relationship with this cat. Think about the recent actions of the Shaoguang group. You should know that," Celestine said. The recent actions of the Shaoguang group were indeed very big. After the return of the third Master Fang, as many people expected, every time he returned, there would be big actions. Ronchi took Aujin out of the room, and Leopard guarded outside the door. In the room, except for Celestine and Yi Hao, there was only the black cat lying on the sofa, sleeping soundly. The next day, when Zheng Tan woke up, he shook his head. His mind was still a little numb, and the memory of last night was slowly coming back to him. Zheng Tan secretly scolded himself. Last night, he was like a psychopath, an idiot. It really ruined his image. Fortunately, the Jiao family didn't see it, or they would definitely think that his cat was crazy. After drinking, the protein in the body was seriously lost. Yi Hao asked people to prepare a very rich breakfast. Celestine and Aujin sat at the table. Aujin was going to go to the hospital first, but Ronchi said that he had already sent someone to help transfer him to another hospital and take care of the rest of the things. He told Aujin to eat breakfast first and not to worry too much. Zheng Tan stood at the table and asked Celestine to put whatever he wanted to eat on the plate in front of him. Celestine felt that the cat was almost becoming a master now. He even had to be served for breakfast. Chapter 79. Yi Hao did not immediately come over to talk to Zheng Tan, and he did not appear in the night building the next day. He left first when he heard that he had something to do. Aujin and his friends were now transferred to a nearby hospital, which was much better than the small hospital they had been in before. It also allowed them to receive better treatment. It was not because they were seriously injured, but to ensure that there would be no other sequelae when they performed in the future. It would be more secure if they went to a better hospital. Celestine was driving. Only Zheng Tan was in the back seat of the car, and Aujin was sitting in the passenger seat. Originally, Aujin was going to sit in the back seat, but he found that he did not know how to treat the black cat. He knew that he could get help because of the black cat. Celestine had already said that he would help them for the sake of the black cat. However, Aujin did not understand. Wasn't it just a cat? Even if it was special, it was just a cat, wasn't it? In addition to Celestine's attitude, the people in the night building were also the same. Aujin recalled what had happened in the morning. When they came out of the night building, they met Ronchi, who was talking to someone on the first floor. When Ronchi saw him and Celestine, he greeted them with a smile. It was normal, but when he saw the black cat, his expression was not so natural. Aujin had been out for so long that he had worked hard to read people's expressions. Therefore, even if Ronchi's expression only flashed for a moment, he still noticed it. As for Celestine, Aujin was a little afraid. Yesterday, he was drunk, but he still remembered some things. Celestine got too much information from him. He even got the hospital addresses and ward numbers of the other 4 people. Although Celestine did not mean any harm, Aujin felt that he was still not vigilant enough. Yesterday, he was too impulsive in the night building. Especially when he saw the performance in the East Palace, he immediately let down his guard. It seemed that he still needed to train. As for Mr. Fong, Celestine told him not to talk about Mr. Fong to others in the future, or he might get into trouble. Sure enough, they were not ordinary people. Even the cat was not an ordinary cat. After parking the car, Celestine took out his backpack, unzipped it, and shook it before looking at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan felt helpless, but he could only jump into the bag. Ran Qi had already told them their ward number. Celestine and Ajin went straight to the ward. It was not a single ward. There were 4 beds in each ward. However, there were only 4 of Ajin's friends in this ward. 3 of them were bedridden, and one of them could sleep on the remaining hospital bed when he was on duty. Seeing Ajin come in, the 4 of them had a lot of questions to ask, but because Celestine was present, they didn't ask too much. They were still puzzled. A stranger had come last night, but it was only this morning that they were going to transfer to another hospital. After a lot of trouble, they were transferred to this new hospital. They didn't have to worry about anything else. Someone had already taken care of it. There was no free lunch in the world. They, who had experienced a wandering life, knew better. Therefore, the other party's behavior made the 4 of them even more uncertain. They hoped that Ajin would come back soon so that they could figure out the reason. After listening to Ajin's simple explanation, the 4 of them looked at the black cat that had crawled out of Celestine's backpack in disbelief. Was this cat a big deal? No matter how big its background was, they could live here and have the opportunity to enter the night building to learn the singing skills. Even if it was only in the north of the night building, it was great news for them. Originally, they had made all kinds of plans for the worst. They were even ready to pack up and go home. They didn't expect that things would turn around. Everyone wanted to return home in glory, instead of escaping when they were in a desperate situation. Zheng Tan glanced at the people in the hospital. Of the 3 people lying on the hospital bed, one had a bandage on his head, one had a cast on his foot, and the last one probably had internal injuries. Now, the 3 of them looked quite energetic, which proved that the injuries were really not very serious. It was really unlucky for them to go to the bar to sing and end up like this. However, this was also common. It was not rare to have conflicts with other singers in the bar. But Ajin and the others didn't have anyone to rely on or know here, so it was not strange for them to be bullied and ostracized. Zheng Tan just came to see these people. After that, he jumped into his backpack and motioned to Celestine to leave the hospital. When Celestine left, he patted Ajin on the shoulder. "Young man, you still have a lot to learn. Remember, don't be so easily tricked in the future." Ajin was surprised. It seemed that Celestine actually knew that what he had done was not appropriate, but at the same time, he also taught Ajin a lesson. After leaving the hospital, Celestine directly sent Zheng Tan to the family area of Tsinghua University. If he didn't send the cat back, the Jiao family would definitely be more dissatisfied. In that case, it would be difficult for him to borrow the cat to take Zheng Tan back to play in the future. However, on the way to Tsinghua University, Celestine was also paying attention to the black cat in the back seat. It tilted its head and seemed to be thinking about something. In fact, Zheng Tan was thinking about some details after he got drunk yesterday. He secretly sighed that he was still too impulsive. Zheng Tan didn't expect that he would have so many emotions in his heart. Because of such an opportunity, all of them were released through howling. Fortunately, it was in the night building. The soundproofing was good, and no one else knew about it. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing. In addition, Zheng Tan also guessed that the thing that Celestine wanted him to help with was definitely related to Yihao. Zheng Tan could roughly guess what kind of background Yihao, Ran Qi, and Leopard had. To be able to support such a big night building and safely operate in such a prosperous area, they must have a certain amount of power. As for what Celestine wanted him to help with, Zheng Tan didn't know yet. Zheng Tan was thinking about it when Celestine, who was driving in front, spoke. "Black charcoal, look, there are pigeons outside," Celestine said. Zheng Tan stood up and looked out of the window. There was a square there, and there were a few pigeons in the square. There weren't many pigeons, unlike the pigeons on TV. At this time, no one would feed the pigeons, so there was nothing to see. But why did Celestine talk about pigeons? I heard that in the last century, There were people abroad who used pigeons as spies. After training the pigeons, they would install a mini listening device on these special pigeons and let them fly to the destination under the guidance of a laser, such as a windowsill. After these special pigeons stopped, they would follow the training steps and peck the listening device to turn on a special switch. Then, the listening device that was originally installed on the pigeon would automatically detach from the pigeon's leg and start the eavesdropping mission, and the pigeon would have flown far away. After saying this, Celestine laughed at himself in his heart. He was actually talking about such a profound topic with a cat, and he was beating around the bush. How could the cat understand? Even if the cat was smart, it couldn't think in a roundabout way like a human. Just then, the car reached the intersection and there was a red light. Celestine looked at the cat in the back seat through the rearview mirror. He originally thought that the cat would squat there with an indifferent look as usual, but he didn't expect to see the cat squinting and staring at him. The meaning in its eyes, Celestine's heart skipped a beat. Did it understand him? It was really King strange. Although his master had said that cats are spiritual creatures, it would be a little demonic if it was too spiritual, which would scare people. Black Charcoal, Yi Hao has a small problem. It's not that it can't be solved, but it will take a long time. But Yi Hao wants to solve the problem as soon as possible, so he wants to install a listening device in someone's house. However, it's not easy for people to enter that place, so he hopes that you can help. How about it? Do you understand? Celestine looked at the back seat through the rearview mirror. Jing Tan yawned and lay down on her stomach. Celestine said again, "How about this? If you understand what I mean, just pat the car seat." Jing Tan swung its tail and patted the back of the car seat. Celestine's eyes twitched. This Ker really understood. Could it skip the training process and go directly to the battlefield? It's not a very dangerous thing. I just don't want to alert the enemy. If you go to carry out the mission, I'll be there to help. If anything happens, I promise I'll be able to get you out of there, okay? Jing Tan swung its tail and patted the car seat again. How about it? Are you interested in taking this job? Celestine asked. This time, Jing Tan didn't immediately swing its tail. It only swung it after about half a minute. This time, it was Celestine's turn to be surprised. Did it really understand? Did it really know what it was going to do? Could it be that this cat actually didn't understand anything and was just swinging its tail to tease people? According to Celestine's original plan, training, cooperation, etc., it would take at least a week to let the cat know what it was going to do and how to do it. But the current situation was a little out of Celestine's expectations. Anyway, think about it first. I'll pick you up the day after tomorrow, Celestine said. His tone didn't sound like he was talking to a cat, but more like he was talking to a person. Moreover, the conversation was so smooth that Celestine was worried. Did this cat really understand, or was it just pretending? After arriving at Tsinghua University, Celestine's car drove into the east courtyard. After Jing Tan got out of the car, it jumped back into the car. What? Celestine asked curiously. Jing Tan raised its paw and scratched its neck. Oh, I forgot, Celestine said as he took out Jing Tan's access card from his pocket and hung it around Jing Tan's neck. This time, Jing Tan jumped out of the car and left. But it didn't go upstairs. There was no one upstairs at this time. It would be boring up there. On the lawn of the courtyard, Huang and the sheriff were sunbathing. Next to them was the Saint Bernard dog, Little Flower. Huang was still using its paw to step on Little Flower's body. Jing Tan didn't have time to pay attention to them. He was thinking about something now. This time next year, Jiao Pa would probably go abroad for at least a year. By then, the Jiao family wouldn't have a backbone. What if Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo got bullied? He couldn't always count on the people in the courtyard to help him, right? Jiao Pa's friends would definitely take care of him, but Jing Tan hoped that he could do something. Since he had decided to stay here, he had to show his worth. If someone really bullied him, and the proper channels didn't help much, it would be more convenient to ask Yi Hao and the others for help. Sometimes, violence could solve problems more directly. Therefore, Jing Tan didn't want to give up on Yi Hao. Chapter 80. After Celestine left, he didn't come back the next day. Jing Tan was a little disappointed. He had been mentally preparing himself for the whole night, imagining all kinds of high-end Secret Service scenes, but when Celestine showed up, he didn't believe it. Zheng Tan even suspected that Celestine's calls to Jiao Pa, Jiao Ma had been rejected. The Jiao family was the happiest about Celestine not coming back for 2 days. After Zheng Tan came back that day, Jiao Ma immediately took Zheng Tan to Xiaoguo's place for a physical examination. The result was that he was healthy. To be exact, he was in very good condition. Auntie Jiao and Xiaoguo's brother didn't quite understand this. If this cat had really drunk too much wine, it shouldn't be fine, right? At the very least, he should be dispirited or throwing a tantrum. What they didn't know was that Zheng Tan took advantage of this drunken madness to release the pent-up anger in his heart for a long time. Perhaps it was hard for them to imagine how a cat could have such a psychological barrier, but it was the truth. For humans, when their psychological barriers were not released over time, they would develop into mental illnesses, such as ADHD and anxiety caused by inattention, depression and anxiety caused by the pressure of studying, OCD and mania caused by setbacks, and so on. From a 10-year-old child to a 70-year-old man, every age group had different psychological barriers. Zheng Tan's psychology was still that of a human. Even if he had no choice but to accept the reality of becoming a cat in order to survive, it wasn't that easy to get over the psychological barrier. Although drunken madness ruined his image, it was indeed a good way to release his anger. Zheng Tan didn't know how long he would still be in his cat form, nor did he know when this psychological barrier would completely disappear, but at least now he had found a relatively good way to release his anger. It was a way to relax his mind without spending a dime. Well, when he felt depressed again, he would go to the night building and let out a drunken howl. Anyway, the Jiao family couldn't see it, nor could the people around him, so they wouldn't know that he had ruined his image. As for what Yi Hao's people thought and whether they would suffer, it was not within the scope of Zheng Tan's consideration. This was the conclusion that Zheng Tan came to after he came back yesterday and lay on the tree for the whole afternoon. On the other hand, Yi Hao, Ran Qi, and the others were busy dealing with the matters at hand. They didn't even know that a cat had set its eyes on their territory. This week, there was no need to go to Xiaoguo's place to shoot the advertisement, and there was no call from Celestine. There was no one at home. People went to work, and people went to school. Zheng Tan lay on the tree in the courtyard. He didn't know what kind of trees those bushes on the lawn were, but now he knew that they were all smiley flowers. The air was filled with a faint fragrance. Zheng Tan lay on the tall sycamore tree, yawned, stretched, and looked down at Niu Zhuangzhuang, who had started digging on the lawn again. This guy had been thinking about the lawn ever since he saw the hole in the Sahara Desert. Many places on the campus were cement, and the only places that could be dug were the flower beds and lawns. Every time Niu Zhuangzhuang was let out, it would always find a place to dig on the lawn. Sometimes it would hide something in it, and sometimes it was purely for the sake of digging a hole. Could it be that this was also a way to vent its emotions? Zheng Tan didn't understand. He wasn't a dog. Besides, he didn't even understand the psychology of many cats, but cats were hard to guess. Since he was bored, Zheng Tan planned to go to the Shi family area. He hadn't seen little Zhua in a long time. Speaking of which, little Zhua's due date had long passed. She should have given birth already, right? However, he hadn't heard the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma mention it since he came back. It seemed that he had to find the answer himself. Just like Renchang's case, Zheng Tan only found out about Renchang's downfall when he went to the Jiao Pa's building after he came back and heard the students talking about it. It was said that Renchang had an improper relationship with a female student in the School of Economics, and he also had an affair with a certain belle in the School of Foreign Languages. Professor Ren had a wife, who was originally abroad. It was said that she came from a good family and had a temper. When she found out, she flew here and slapped Renchang a few times in front of many people, making Renchang, who always cared about his reputation, embarrassed. It was also said that Professor Ren was involved in the underworld. All kinds of negative rumors spread wildly in the school. The school originally wanted to let Renchang take a break for a while and wait for the storm to blow over. After all, Renchang was indeed capable. However, later on, for unknown reasons, Renchang was forcibly dismissed. Many students guessed that Renchang must have offended some big shot in the school. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been fired so easily. Zheng Tan recalled the face that always had a hypocritical gentleman's smile and thought about some of the rumors he heard. He felt that Celestine, Zhao Lu, and the others must have done something. After all, Zhao Lu must be more familiar with the gossip from other schools. As for the forcible dismissal, it should be the work of Uz, Old Man Lon, and the others. The Jiaopa didn't have the ability to do that. In fact, it was very common for people like Rin Chong to have an affair with a student. It was just that no one knew about it, or even if they knew, they didn't say it. It was even more common abroad. This kind of thing could be big or small. It depended on who was behind it. When Zheng Tan thought about it, he was quite touched. At least there were so many people helping him when he was in trouble. Even Xing, who always had a long face, helped him. However, Xing helped him mostly because of little Zhua. It was worth it to give him the 9-leaf grass. Zheng Tan walked towards the West family compound while thinking about little Zhua's current situation. Walking through the gate of the West family compound, Zheng Tan felt that he was being watched. It wasn't the sight of a human, but the sight of another cat. Looking up at a tree, a tabby cat was lying on the tree. It looked like Huang, but was slightly bigger than Huang. The cat was lying on the branch and looking at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan could feel the hostility of the cat from so far away. Shaking its tail, Zheng Tan was too lazy to pay attention to it and continued to walk into the compound. Along the way, Zheng Tan met several cats. When he came here before, the cats were not grown up. Now they were bigger. There were also many cats in the West family compound. He just didn't know if the sheriff had fought with them before. When he arrived at the tall building where little Zhua lived, Zheng Tan waited at the door for a while. When someone went in, he squeezed through the security guard. Just like before, Zheng Tan chose to take the stairs. If he took the elevator, he would be surrounded by people looking at him as if he was a rare thing. Zheng Tan didn't like that kind of look, so in order to avoid that trouble, Zheng Tan still felt that taking the stairs was more worry-free. In one breath, he rushed to the 6th floor. Zheng Tan came to the door of room 606. He pricked up his ears and listened. He didn't hear anything, so he jumped up and pressed the doorbell. While waiting for the door, Zheng Tan was still wondering if the nanny was still there. He guessed that he would be despised again. After waiting for a few minutes, there was still no movement inside. Zheng Tan felt strange. He jumped up and pressed the doorbell a few more times, but still, no one came to open the door. Could it be that she was still hospitalized after giving birth? Zheng Tan didn't know much about women's affairs, so he couldn't think of a reason. He squatted at the door and waited for another 10 minutes, but still, no one came to open the door. He put his ear to the door and listened for a while, but he didn't hear any other sounds in the room. It really didn't seem like there was anyone inside. Forget it, I'll go back. Zheng Tan didn't want to wait any longer. It seemed that he couldn't wait for someone to open the door. He turned around and left. But just as he walked a few steps and passed by the elevator opened. Zheng Tan glanced at it. He didn't see little Zhua, but he saw Lord Zeng, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Black charcoal? The person in the elevator asked. Lord Zeng was holding a folder in his hand and looked a little tired. Zheng Tan really didn't expect to meet this iron-blooded person from the School of Physics here. He also didn't know how to get along with this Lord Zeng. She wouldn't give him snacks and probably wouldn't allow him to sleep on the chair. He heard that many people like her had obsessive-compulsive disorder or were obsessed with cleanliness. He had only heard about it but had never seen it with his own eyes. Zheng Tan only heard about it from the students when he walked around the campus. As for how much of it was true, he didn't know. After all, you couldn't guess the thoughts of the big shots. Are you here to see little Zhua? Lord Zeng asked. The tip of Zheng Tan's tail twitched. He didn't know how to answer. Lord Zeng didn't wait for Zheng Tan to answer. He looked at the watch on his wrist, turned around, and walked into the elevator. He waved to Zheng Tan outside. Come in, let's go down together. Zheng Tan stood in place and thought for a while. Then he lifted his foot and walked in. When the elevator went down, Zheng Tan felt that the atmosphere inside was a little strange. It was too serious. The enclosed environment always made people inexplicably nervous. Or maybe it was because Lord Zeng's aura was too strong. In short, Zheng Tan felt very uncomfortable. In the future, he'd better take the stairs. The space was more spacious and he felt more comfortable. Originally, Zheng Tan thought that Lord Zeng would just walk him out of the building. However, after leaving the entrance control, Lord Zeng didn't mean to return to the building. I heard from little Zhua that you can understand. Let's take a walk. With that, Lord Zeng lifted his foot and walked in the direction of the west side compound. Zheng Tan was stunned. He didn't understand what Lord Zeng meant. However, he still lifted his foot and followed. The guard at the side gate of the west side family compound had just made a phone call and talked with someone for a long time. He didn't even take a nap. He was a little tired. He stretched his arms and yawned. When his mouth was wide open, he saw Lord Zeng walking over. Before he finished his yawn, he forcibly stopped. The guard hurriedly sat down and looked serious. He wanted to make himself look very energetic and professional. The guards here all had a scale in their hearts. They knew which people were easy to talk to and which people they couldn't afford to offend. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do this job. And Lord Zeng was someone they couldn't afford to offend. Everyone knew the identity of Lord Zeng. They also knew that Lord Zeng had his own way of speaking and doing things. Don't even think about flattering him. However, today the guard felt strange. Recently, Lord Zeng only came here to take a nap or to rest after being busy. Today, it didn't seem like he had taken a nap. Moreover, the famous Lord Zeng was accompanied by a cat. Did Lord Zeng like cats? He had never heard of it. However, this possibility couldn't be ruled out. Chapter 81. Zheng Tan followed Lord Zeng out. The west side family compound was close to the west school gate, and there were more people coming and going. Fortunately, Lord Ying didn't mean to leave the school. She turned a corner and walked along a small path towards the campus. Although they were indeed walking towards the campus, there were many people who knew Lord Zeng at the gate of the west side compound. Zheng Tan didn't know how many people stared at him. Some people were whispering behind him about whether the cat belonged to Lord Zeng and why Lord Zeng was in the mood to walk her cat. If she wanted to avoid these people, it was actually very simple. She just had to walk along the relatively deserted gravel road from the other gate of the west side compound. There was no need to walk towards the school gate. Zheng Tan didn't understand what Lord Zeng meant. Telling others that this cat actually had a backer? And the backer was the famous Lord Zeng of Tsinghua University? Zheng Tan followed Lord Zeng into the campus while thinking about this big shot's thoughts. At the same time, Zheng Tan was also curious. He didn't see little Zhua when he went there just now. Did little Zhua move? This house did belong to Lord Zeng, but since Lord Zeng let little Zhua live there was absolutely no reason for her to take it back now. Besides, little Zhua was a student that Lord Zeng valued very much. It had to be said that Lord Zeng had a strong aura. Zheng Tan felt nervous walking next to her. It was really a pity that the physics department often met Lord Zeng's students. Lord Zeng didn't walk all the way. She sat down on a long wooden bench next to a quiet path, patted the seat next to the bench, and looked at Zheng Tan, indicating that he could sit there. Zheng Tan jumped onto the wooden bench and sat next to Lord Zeng, indicating that he was under a lot of pressure. It was obvious that the teachers who had to work with Lord Zeng every day had to bear more psychological pressure than the other teachers. Lord Zeng didn't speak after sitting down. She just looked at the woods in front of her. Zheng Tan studied the forest for a while. There was nothing special about it. There were many small forests like this in Tsinghua University. Looking at Lord Zeng's expression, was he thinking about something? Zheng Tan suddenly felt that people like Old Man Lon were not so bad. Although his temper was a little weird, at least he would speak his mind and let others know what he was thinking so that they could come up with a way to deal with him. However, Zheng Tan was also glad that he was just a cat now. He could just pretend that he didn't know anything. No one would ask him to find a topic to break the rigid atmosphere. At this time, several graduate students from the School of Physics were preparing to withdraw money from the bank at the school gate. They walked over through the shortcut and suddenly saw Lord Zeng sitting on a bench by the roadside. Didn't Lord Zeng go back to rest? Who the F***ck is sitting here right now? The few graduate students were extremely depressed. This was not the time to wander around. With her powerful memory, Lord Zeng had an impression of most of the students in the School of Physics. Moreover, they happened to be part of Lord Zheng's research group, so they were even more familiar with her. They walked around the corner and found Lord Zheng. At this time, it was impossible to pretend that they didn't see her and go back. They could only brace themselves and walk forward. Originally, they wanted to pretend that they didn't see her and just walk past her, but Lord Zheng looked up and glanced at them. "Teacher Yi." "Hello, Teacher Yi." The smiles on their faces were stiff and their hearts were cold. They were ready to be scolded. "What are you doing?" asked Lord Zheng. "Didn't we just get the state subsidies?" "We're going to withdraw money and open an online banking account," said the person who spoke. At the end, he even added an excuse for himself. The bank at the school gate was about to close at 5 o'clock. There were a lot of people. "Now that we're done with the things at hand, we're a little free." Lord Zheng nodded. "Go ahead." "Why is Lord Zheng so easy to talk to today?" The few of them exchanged glances and hurriedly left. They were afraid that Lord Zheng would change his mind and scold them again. Zheng Tan looked at this scene and was amused. These unlucky kids. They even ran into Big Boss on a trip out. They would probably continue to be nervous for a long time. "Seriously, I'm like a scourge," said Lord Zheng softly. Zheng Tan turned his head to look at Lord Zheng next to him. It seemed that Lord Zheng was a little melancholy. Lord Zheng turned his attention back to the cat next to him. This time, he didn't continue to be silent. Instead, he said, "I heard that 9-leaf grass was given to little Zhua by you? You're really a good cat." As he said that, Lord Zheng even reached out a finger to touch Zheng Tan's cat head. Zheng Tan didn't like others touching his head like that, but since it was Lord Zheng, he would endure it. After all, Lord Zheng had helped him vent his anger. "The child is indeed very healthy. It's a boy." Little Zhua gave the child a nickname, Kitten, Little Kitten Zhua, said Lord Zheng. For things like nicknames, there were flowers, birds, fish, insects, metal, stone, earth, wood, as well as dragons, tigers, dogs, leopards, and so on. It was said that nicknames were a kind of rhetorical activity and phenomenon that was quite distinctive and worthy of attention. Its rhetorical justification was mainly reflected in the logic of unreasonable but wonderful. At the same time, nicknames also reflected the love parents had for their children. However, Zheng Tan himself didn't have a nickname. Perhaps he used to have one, but his parents didn't mention it at that time, so Zheng Tan wouldn't know. Sometimes, Zheng Tan envied those who had nicknames. Although nicknames didn't sound nice on the surface, they made people feel more alive. It was like a memory negative, revealing the intimacy and liveliness that came from deep within. Little Kitten Zhua? He really wanted to see it. Little Kitten Zhua, who was just born, wouldn't be like those naughty children who pulled their tails, right? Zheng Tan remembered that before Little Kitten Zhua was born, he had touched him with his head across Little Zhua's belly. Speaking of Little Kitten Zhua, Lord Zheng's face softened a lot, as if he was talking about his own grandson. "When the time comes, I'll carry him over to show you. I'll also let him know the origin of his name and let him see the black brother that his mother often talks about." Lord Zheng talked a lot about Little Kitten Zhua, such as how nervous everyone was when he was born. After all, many people believed that this child would not be healthy. Those who had a good relationship with Little Zhua must have felt bad in their hearts. It wasn't until the child came out and went through a series of examinations that everyone was relieved. Lord Zheng said that Little Kitten Zhua wore the 9-leaf grass pendant, and according to Little Zhua's intention, he would always wear it, and there would be no other gold, silver, or jade to replace it. However, Lord Zheng basically talked about Little Kitten Zhua, but he didn't mention Little Zhua. Where was Little Zhua? Was he not coming back? Why did Lord Zheng personally carry Little Kitten Zhua over, and not Little Zhua himself? Where were Little Kitten Zhua and Little Zhua now? Zheng Tan tilted his head and listened. Now the aura around Lord Zheng was not as strong as before. In addition, Zheng Tan was also quite interested in this topic. The man and the cat got along well, even if it was just the man talking and the cat listening. When Lord Zheng talked about Little Kitten Zhua, he also observed the cat in front of him. Although the cat did not make any sound in response, it was enough to let people know that it was listening and that it understood. It was no wonder that Old Man Lon was furious with Ren Chong over this cat. Lord Zeng was not as prejudiced against black cats as Little Zhu's previous nanny. Even if the cat in front of him was a little strange, Lord Zeng did not make too much of a fuss. Having reached his current status and reputation, he had seen a lot of strange things, and this was not one of them. He wondered what Lord Zeng would think if he knew that the cat in front of him had a human soul. Pay attention to people in the future. Don't get caught again, said Lord Zeng. Zheng Tan's ears twitched. That shouldn't be the case. He had learned from his mistakes. He wasn't that stupid. After sitting in silence for a while, Lord Zeng sighed. There are two kinds of people, those who can think things through and those who can't. Coming out with you for a walk really made me think through some things. Forget it. Everyone has their own ambitions. There are always things that they have to do. I can't interfere. Zheng Tan did not think that he had done anything that could make Lord Zeng think things through. He also did not know what Lord Zeng had thought through. Seeing Lord Zeng get up, he knew that Lord Zeng was about to leave, so he also got up from the bench. You don't have to go there in the short term. They're not there, said Lord Zeng as he was leaving. Lord Zeng did not know if the cat could understand the meaning of his words. He just wanted to try and say what he wanted to say. The house in the Western District was often empty. She only went there occasionally to take a rest or take a nap. The time was uncertain. She did not go there every day. Even if the cat went there, no one would open the door. The man and the cat walked back along the path and separated at the intersection in front. Lord Zeng went to the family compound in the west, while Zheng Tan went back to the family compound in the east. When he returned to the family compound in the east, Zheng Tan saw the Saint Bernard dog, Little Flower, walking slowly on the grass with a child on its back. The child was from the compound. He went to kindergarten and lived in the same building as Little Flower's family. The little kid usually liked to ride Little Flower around the yard. The other little kids were envious of him. Even though Little Flower's temperament was gentle, not everyone could ride on its back. Looking at the little kid who was laughing happily on Little Flower's back, Zheng Tan could not help but think of Zhuo the kitten that Lord Zeng had just mentioned. Well, if Zhuo the kitten wanted to ride a big dog in the future, he would let Little Flower suffer. Anyway, Little Flower was big. It would be happy to run around the yard with a child. Just as he was thinking, Zheng Tan heard the beeping of a car horn. He turned around and looked in the direction of the sound. It was Celestine's car. Celestine stretched out its arm from the car window and waved at Zheng Tan. It asked Zheng Tan to get in the car. Was it preparing to start a high-end mission? Zheng Tan ran over and jumped into the car through the open window. He looked at Celestine in the driver's seat. Go to the night building. I called your cat father and told him that you can leave directly. Zheng Tan originally thought that he was going to take on the task of installing a bug. However, on the way to the night building, he heard Celestine's nagging. Was there something else? So what Wei Ling said about the listening device the day before yesterday was just to deceive the cat? Those words were just a test? That was a little too cautious. But thinking about it, it was also true. In the 1960s, Kleber boasted that it was the world's first-class bug. Today, it could be bought in many foreign toy stores. Yi Hao and the others should have been familiar with eavesdropping wars. If they really wanted to eavesdrop with Yi Hao's ability, they would not need the help of a cat. Chapter 82. This time, Zheng Tan did not walk into the night building openly. Instead, he was brought in by Celestine. When they reached the third floor and entered one of the rooms, Celestine let Zheng Tan come out. This time, it was not the room where he borrowed Drunken Howler, but another one. The space was slightly bigger, and the decorations were a bit strange. There were many props. In the room, other than Yi Hao, Ron Qi, and Leopard, there was also a young man in his mid-20s. He looked ordinary, unlike Ron Qi, who had an elite temperament and was not as strong as Leopard. The first impression he gave was really nothing special. However, to be able to stay here, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Yi Hao saw Celestine come in with the cat and gestured for them to wait. Then he walked into a small room with Leopard. It was a temporary office. In the hall of the room, Ron Qi was sitting there, listening to the young man explain something. Zheng Tan looked and saw that the young man was fiddling with some coils, transistors, and other things. Zheng Tan did not understand these things, so he could not understand what they were talking about. Zheng Tan also did not understand the content of the conversation between the two people. The young man said something like "Lenmis" during the Vietnam War, Lampard in the 1980s, and other phrases that Zheng Tan had never heard of. Driven by curiosity, Zheng Tan jumped out of the backpack, walked over, and stretched his neck. The two people who were talking noticed Zheng Tan's approach and glanced at him. Ran Qi unconsciously stepped back, and the unfamiliar young man looked at Zheng Tan, then looked at Celestine, who was sitting not far away and eating peanuts, and continued talking. Zheng Tan saw a diagram on the table in front of the two of them. It was a hand-drawn circuit diagram with letters and numbers on it, such as R1, R2, Q1, Q2, NF, PF, and so on. Zheng Tan was dizzy from looking at it, so she gave up looking at it. After squatting aside and listening for a few minutes, Zheng Tan finally understood that this young man was teaching Ran Qi how to make a simple eavesdropping device. It seemed that this young man was a master of eavesdropping devices. After teaching him how to make a simple eavesdropping device, the young man also talked about some things related to eavesdropping devices, as well as some anti-eavesdropping jobs he had taken on. The more Zheng Tan listened, the more interested he became. This kind of gossip was relatively easy to understand. He didn't expect that so many officials in Chuhua City had asked this person to remove their listening devices and secret recording devices. Officials would also use such spy-like equipment to collect dirt on each other, spy on each other, and climb up the ranks by grabbing onto their opponents' weaknesses. In particular, those who held the power of approval were the targets of many people's prying eyes. There could be all kinds of eavesdropping devices in air conditioners, power sockets, cars, and so on. This world was F***king crazy. So many people say that these things are bugs. In English, eavesdropping devices and bugs are the same word. They are both bugs. Many times, they would directly ask me, "Are there any bugs here?" The young man joked as he talked about the things he had encountered. However, he didn't reveal the names and identities of the customers at all. It seemed that he was more professional. In this way, Zheng Tan also understood that he couldn't help with the eavesdropping device. With an expert around, it wouldn't be his turn to take the risk. These people probably wouldn't be at ease. The difference in ability was there, so Zheng Tan had nothing to be unhappy about. Sometimes, Zheng Tan also admired people like this. They could specialize in one profession without worrying about food and drink, and silently make a fortune. He guessed that this kind of person was suitable for high-end Secret Service work. Geniuses and lunatics changed the world. This saying was indeed true. After the Water X incident, Secret Service agents everywhere developed laser eavesdropping devices in order to not follow in the footsteps of others. Later, they developed sensor eavesdropping devices. Those spy technicians were really F***king geniuses. Let me tell you the principle of laser eavesdropping. Installing this kind of eavesdropping device doesn't require you to sneak into a room. This also avoids the risk of being caught red-handed. Between the two types of light produced by the laser generator, the invisible infrared laser is chosen and used for invisibility. Later, the young man and Ran Qi began to talk about some professional topics. Zheng Tan couldn't understand, so he returned to Celestine's side. He scooped out a few peanuts from the plate and pushed them in front of Celestine. He asked Celestine to help him peel the peanuts. "You still eat peanuts?" Celestine didn't know if other cats ate peanuts or if they would have diarrhea if they ate them, but since the cat in front of him wanted to eat peanuts, he peeled a few for him. Originally, Celestine peeled peanuts, eating one peanut and giving the other to Zheng Tan. In the end, all the peanuts were taken away by Zheng Tan. Celestine curled his lips. This was a F***king master. He had to be served by others just to eat peanuts. After about half an hour, Yi Hao and Leopard finished talking and came out of the small office room. The young man who was talking to Long Qi raised his head. Seeing that everyone had come out, he stopped talking and put down the pen in his hand. He then patted some crumbs stuck on his sleeves and stood up. "Have you reached an agreement? Then let's get to work. I'll help you disinfect at the same time." "Thanks for your hard work, Barger," Yi Hao said. "You're welcome. I can still help with this." After saying that, Barger left with Leopard. Zheng Tan stopped chewing peanuts and looked at the young man who walked out of the room. This name was really special. No wonder he was in the field of espionage. He just didn't know if this was a real name or a code name. Yi Hao sat down on the sofa and looked at Celestine. How was it? You didn't get scolded over there? Every time I go over there, the children at home are wary of me like I'm a thief. Even if I helped them before, now the two children treat me like I'm an enemy. It's not easy for me to help you. Celestine sighed. Yi Hao snorted and didn't bother with Celestine's words. Did you tell it? Yi Hao asked, nodding his chin towards Zheng Tan. I mentioned a little but didn't say anything specific. After all, the materials are all with you. I can't say much. Celestine spread out his hands. Yi Hao looked at the cat that was squatting on the low table and chewing peanuts. He still didn't quite believe it. However, even if it didn't succeed, it was just a cat. It wouldn't arouse any suspicion. Zheng Tan finished chewing peanuts and listened to Celestine explain what he needed to do. It was actually very simple. In summary, he needed to get a list of names for someone. Zheng Tan didn't know what the list was for Yi Hao and the others. He didn't need to know. It wasn't a good thing to know too much, even if it was just a cat. And the person that Zheng Tan needed to find was lurking in the other party's sphere of influence as an undercover agent. That person had some listening devices installed around him, and there were people monitoring him all day long. Yi Hao couldn't send people to get in touch with him. It was easy to be exposed at this critical time. Zheng Tan looked at the materials that Yi Hao had taken out. He was a man who was stronger than a leopard and had scars on his face. He looked a little ferocious. He was probably the kind of person that children should stay away from. Using the words that the aunties in the compound often used to describe him, he doesn't look like a good person. But this strong man, who could twist people's arms without blinking, liked cats since he was young. Zheng Tan almost choked when he heard Yi Hao's explanation. He really couldn't imagine that kind of scene. Even when he was undercover, this cat lover would go over to feed stray cats whenever he saw them. Once, this person met a cat trafficker and beat the cat trafficker to the hospital on the spot. The trafficker was hospitalized for a long time and almost died. From this point of view, Zheng Tan's impression of this person was much better. After experiencing the incident of being caught, Zheng Tan hated cat traffickers. Hearing this person's deeds, he could only clap his hands and cheer. Sure enough, one couldn't judge a book by its cover. At the same time, Zheng Tan finally understood why Celestine wanted him to help. It was easier to get close to the undercover agent without arousing the other party's vigilance. After all, the undercover agent usually came in contact with dozens of cats, if not hundreds. And Zheng Tan wasn't an expensive cat breed now. It was black, which many people despised. In addition, Zheng Tan had experienced the life of a stray and knew the eyes that stray cats should have. So, Zheng Tan was confident and was very willing to help in this matter. Just treat it as an adventure game. Celestine also said that it would lurk nearby to prevent accidents from happening, so that Zheng Tan could rest assured that there would be no danger to his life. Since he had decided to help, the necessary preparations still had to be done. Zheng Tan and Celestine practiced for a while. To do this kind of contact work, they still had to have some acting skills. Zheng Tan also had some experience from filming the advertisement, so his performance also made Yi Hao and Celestine very satisfied. As for Ran Qi, who was sitting far away, he looked at Zheng Tan as if he was looking at a monster. Zheng Tan found that Ran Qi was wearing a pendant today, which was probably used to ward off evil spirits. TSK, it looked like an elite, but its ability to accept things was not as good as Xiao Zhua and the others. Ran Qi, who was originally sitting 10 meters away, saw the black cat's eyes and suddenly felt a chill on his back. That look was contempt, right? It was definitely contempt. After sitting for a while, Ran Qi really couldn't sit still anymore, so he said goodbye to Yi Hao and left the room. Ran Qi, this guy, hey. Celestine didn't finish his words. Everyone knew what he meant, but he could also understand. After all, this kind of extraordinary thing was not something that everyone could accept, especially those who often came into contact with some dark things. It was inevitable that they would think more. Right? Since we decided to let Black Charcoal get the list, we have to be prepared, Celestine said. Zheng Tan didn't understand what the so-called preparation meant, but when Celestine opened a box, Zheng Tan's face froze. If it wasn't for the cover of the black fur on his face, he would definitely find that Zheng Tan's face was like sh*t. The box that Celestine took out contained makeup equipment, such as dust and some sticky liquid that he didn't know. Come on, makeup. A stray cat should look like a stray cat, Celestine said, reaching out to grab a handful of dust and sprinkling it on Zheng Tan. Chapter 83. After waking up in the morning, the flat-top guy opened the door of his room and went to the balcony to breathe in the fresh air. He raised his hand and looked at the rising sun. A hint of worry flashed in his eyes. He had a memory card in his hand. After he saved the information on the card, he had been waiting for an opportunity to give the card to the contact person. However, there had been a lot of activity recently. The higher-ups had begun to suspect him. The flat-top guy was also among the people who were suspected. The people who were suspected were closely monitored. The flat-top guy knew that there were listening devices in his house and that there were people watching his surroundings. Therefore, he was quite anxious. However, he did not show it. As the flat-top guy was thinking, a warm and soft body pressed against him from behind. "What's wrong?" the person behind him asked. The woman's face was beautiful. She looked like the gentle type. "I'm thinking that my injury has healed. When will I have work to do?" The flat-top guy smiled. "Take care of yourself. Don't leave any side effects," the woman said. Her words were filled with concern and worry. "It's just that I've been a little bored recently," the flat-top guy said. He had been stabbed in the abdomen. In fact, he could have dodged the stab, but he didn't. He only avoided the stab to his vital parts in order to increase the trust of his superiors. However, there had been some leaks recently, and he was still classified as a suspect. Since the crackdown in Chuhua City, many people had begun to change the way they operated. At least, that was the case on the surface. However, there were rules in the underworld. There were wars in the business world. No matter what the new situation was, there would always be competition. The probing and squeezing of each other had never stopped. The words of the two were filled with tenderness and sweetness. However, when they were not looking at each other, their gazes were not. "Huh." The flat-top guy looked at the wall in the yard. Their house was a 2-story building with a small yard of more than 10 square meters. Many houses in the suburbs had such a design. The flat-top guy's house was rented. The pond in the yard was dug by himself. There were some small fish in it. As for why there were small fish in the yard, those who were familiar with the flat-top guy knew that it was prepared for the cats. The small fish in the yard were actually for the cats to catch them. Because they were afraid that cats would drown, the pool was not too deep. The sides of the pool were either made of smooth tiles or earth walls, so that cats that had fallen into the water could climb out of the pool. There would always be stray cats coming here to fish. They would see one every 2 or 3 days, so the people here were used to it. The flat-top guy stood on the balcony on the 2nd floor and could see everything clearly. A black cat jumped up from the courtyard wall and looked at them warily. After hesitating for a while, as if it felt that they would not do anything else, it walked towards the pond. "Another stray cat," the woman behind Flat-Top said. His eyes were filled with disdain. She was actually very repulsed by stray cats. They could carry parasites, skin diseases, and other diseases. If the higher-ups had not arranged for her to get close to the flat-top guy and monitor his movements and the people he came into contact with, she would definitely not be here. Stray cats were already driving her crazy. Zheng Tan stood on the wall and looked up at the balcony on the 2nd floor. He looked at his target, Flathead, again. After confirming that it was the person he was looking for, he jumped off the wall and went to the pool. Zheng Tan was very satisfied with his performance just now. He wanted to give himself an Academy Award. Compared to domestic cats, stray cats were more vigilant, even fierce. They did not trust people very much, so they deliberately showed vigilance and hesitation. And as a cat, the first thing they cared about was food. Even if Zheng Tan did not like it, he had to pretend. Celestine had also told him that there was a fish pond in the courtyard, specially for cats. He could go catch as much as he wanted. But Zheng Tan did not have much interest in catching fish. First of all, he was not interested in raw fish. Ever since he became a cat, he had not eaten raw fish. Second of all, he did not have much experience in catching fish. As a cat that was adopted on the first day he woke up, Xianxia did not worry about food except for the time when he was a stray. Even when he was a stray, he would steal food. He did not catch fish himself. How to catch fish was entirely based on his feelings. Xianxia looked very embarrassed now. If the Jiao family saw Xianxia now, they would be very distressed. Their black charcoal looked very pitiful now. Xianxia could not do anything about it. Celestine said that he wanted to put on makeup. If he did not put on makeup, it would not be easy. Although Xianxia had black fur and was not as dirty as white or light-colored cats, there was not much luster to her fur. Perhaps it was because of the layer of dust on her fur. Some parts of her fur were clumped together in clumps, as if they were lumps. It had to be said that Wei Lung's makeup skills were amazing. The places that the cat could lick didn't have these lumps. Only the places that the cat couldn't comb would have lumps. This way, they were more careful and had an extra layer of naturalness to prevent suspicion. After finishing the fur, Celestine commented, "You are so strong. If you don't put on makeup, how can you look like a stray?" Couldn't stray cats be stronger? Xianxia remembered that when he was a stray, he had seen a few cats without cat tags wandering outside. They were all quite strong. If they were not strong, would they be able to snatch food and territory and survive safely? Especially in the wild. Not every stray cat was thin and weak. Xianxia felt like he was a homeless person wearing tattered and patched clothes. He came to the side of the pond and looked at himself in the water's reflection. He had mixed feelings. Retracting his attention, Xianxia looked at the small fish swimming in the pond and wondered how to catch them. The fish in the pond were not colorful ornamental fish. They were indeed very ordinary fish. There were some stones around and in the pond for cats to catch fish, so they could stand on the stones to catch fish. Xianxia knew that the two people standing on the second floor were paying attention to him, so he had to show the same preferences as other cats. This was normal. He circled the pond twice, then stood by the pond, raised an arm, and looked at a fish that was slowly swimming over. He stretched out his claws. He did not catch it. That small fish swam away in the blink of an eye and mixed with the other small fish. He could not tell which one it was. Xianxia shook the water off his claws, then changed to another place and waited for another opportunity. Maybe the fish here were often stimulated, so they were more delicate and not easy to catch. After not catching fish twice, Xianxia was also frustrated. If he did not catch a fish, Xianxia would be embarrassed to call himself a cat. When a small carp the length of a finger slowly swam to the side, Xianxia saw the opportunity and stretched out his claws. He bent his palm and accurately picked up the fish from the water, then threw it directly to the grass by the pond. The small fish that was thrown to the grass flapped its tail and jumped. Xianxia shook the water off his claws and walked over. When he walked to the fish, Xianxia hesitated. The fish was out. What should he do? He could not eat it, right? F***ck, I can't do it. Facing a raw fish, a fish that had not been scaled, had not been gutted, and was still covered in grass and mud. Maybe someone had even peed in the pond. How could Xianxia eat it? As picky as Xianxia was, he could not eat it at all. At this moment, Celestine, who was hiding in a nearby residential building, was using binoculars to observe the situation. He rubbed his forehead. He remembered that the Jiao family had said that the cat did not eat raw fish. Black charcoal, after you catch the fish, what should you do? Although he was a little helpless, Celestine felt that the cat should be able to handle this kind of thing, so he continued to observe. Xianxia looked at the fish jumping on the grass and thought for a while. It seemed that if Huang and the sheriff were not very hungry, they would first play with the prey they caught. They would play with the prey until it was about to die and did not struggle, then eat it. Or they would just leave the prey that was about to die. This was a good idea. Xianxia thought. After making the decision, Xianxia thought back to when he saw Huang and the others playing in the courtyard. Then he copied how Huang played with the grasshopper. He bent his claws and hooked the fish that was jumping on the grass. When the small fish was thrown into the air, Xianxia raised his body and stretched out 2 claws to hold the small fish. The next step should have been to bite, but Xianxia could not bear to bite it. He decided to rub it twice instead. However, the fish was too sticky and slippery, and Jing Tan did not use his claws to nail the fish. When he rubbed, he did not use enough strength and directly rubbed the fish out. The small crucian carp made a beautiful parabola in the air and fell to the side of the pond. It flapped its tail twice and fell into the pond before Jing Tan could reach it. It swam away. Flathead, Celestine, Jing Tan really did not intend to let the fish go. He originally planned to play with it and then throw it where it was, but in the end he accidentally rubbed the fish away. The woman standing next to Flathead saw this scene and covered her mouth to laugh. "This cat is so stupid. Maybe this cat is not hungry and just wants to catch fish to play," Flathead said. He had seen cats that would fish out fish to play with it before eating it, and some cats would immediately hide to the side to eat the fish after fishing it out. Looking at the black cat next to the pond, it did not look like it was hungry. It probably just wanted to play, right? The woman did not comment on Flathead's explanation. Anyway, she did not like stray cats. They were dirty, not only ugly, but also fierce. The cat in front of her had an additional trait: stupid. She wrinkled her nose in disgust. The woman was a little impatient to look at the cat there. Just as she was about to turn back to the room, she saw the black stray cat walk around the pond twice, give up on catching fish, and walk towards the house. Jing Tan looked at the closed door, wagged its tail, walked to the side, jumped on the windowsill, and flipped into the house from the side window. Windows were naturally like doors for cats. This was the result of not closing the window. Flathead and the others had similar situations before, but at that time, they did not close the door, so the cat could enter. The design of this house was not good. It was not ventilated, and the first floor always felt damp. Therefore, the windows were often open for ventilation. "Aya, I still have cut cooked beef in the kitchen downstairs. Don't let the cat take it away." The woman shouted and quickly ran downstairs. Chapter 84. After Jing Tan entered the house through the window, he roughly scanned his surroundings. The decorations were very normal, and there were no luxurious items. The sofa and other items were relatively old. Just as Celestine had said, these were all left behind by the original landlord. Therefore, even if Jing Tan caused a ruckus, he wouldn't feel guilty. Due to the poor design, the first floor felt a little dark and damp. Jing Tan hurried to understand the general layout of the first floor before the person upstairs came down. Then, even if he had to escape, he wouldn't be too flustered. Celestine had said that there were listening devices here, and there should also be cameras installed. Therefore, Jing Tan had to act as natural as possible, more like a stray cat. He knew that there were cameras and listening devices here, but he still pretended that he didn't know. It was indeed a little weird. It was hard for the flat top to pretend that he didn't know anything when he was trying to understand the situation. He just didn't know what the flat top's mentality was when he was having sex with his current girlfriend. When the heavens were about to give a great responsibility to a great man, the first thing was to have a strong will. As expected, the people who did this kind of undercover work had a strong will. Sniffing the air, Jing Tan followed the direction of the smell. Wasn't a cat going to sneak into someone's house to steal food? Otherwise, would it be rummaging through boxes and cabinets to look for the wallet? As he walked towards the kitchen, Jing Tan also paid attention to the electrical appliances and furniture from the living room to the kitchen. His ears twitched. The woman upstairs was about to come down. Jing Tan quickened his pace. When the woman rushed to the kitchen, she saw the dirty, ugly, and stupid stray cat sniffing the plate of cut beef. Immediately, the woman's heart was on fire. "Go away, stinky cat!" The woman shouted and picked up a spatula. Jing Tan pretended to be shocked and, accidentally, stepped over the plate of beef. Then, accidentally kicked over the seasoning jar. The jar of pepper fell to the ground, and the pepper inside spilled out. Then, the jar of salt, the jar of MSG, and a few pretty ceramic bowls were kicked down and broke one by one. The woman was even angrier. She hoped that the cat would be chased out. She couldn't leave it for even a moment. While dodging the spatula that the woman threw at him, Jing Tan looked for a place to hide. Celestine had told Jing Tan that he could do it in moderation, but this moderation would have to be determined by Jing Tan himself. Feeling that it was about time, Zheng Tan dodged the spatula and jumped out from under the woman's arm. He jumped from the stove to the cupboard. The cupboard in this kitchen was relatively large, with a length of nearly 2 meters. The height of the cupboard was also relatively high, with the top about half a meter from the ceiling. It was said that this family used to run a small restaurant business. Later on, they stopped working and moved all the pots and pans back. There were quite a lot of things. Behind the cupboard, there was a shelf filled with all kinds of steamers, cooking pots, and so on. Because no one had used them for a long time, they were all covered with a layer of dust. After Zheng Tan jumped onto the cupboard, the woman had no choice but to hit it twice with the spatula, hoping to chase the cat down. However, the cat just hid there and ignored her. The woman was so angry that she threw away the spatula in her hand and turned to look at Flathead, who was standing at the kitchen door. "Why you still standing here? Hurry up and chase this cat out." After thinking about it, she felt that Flathead might not be satisfied with her actions just now. She looked at the pot of beef and pointed at it. "When the time comes, let it eat the beef." After saying that, the woman walked out of the kitchen. Because of the cat chase, the kitchen was covered in dust. The woman was going to the bathroom to take a shower. She hoped that she wouldn't have to face that ugly and dirty cat when she came out. Seeing the woman walk out, Zheng Tan felt that she wouldn't come back to the kitchen for a while. He was relieved, but he couldn't let his guard down. Since Celestine said that there might be surveillance everywhere, Zheng Tan couldn't act too abruptly. Looking at the kitchen again, Zheng Tan thought about the ideal place to make a move. Before coming here, Celestine told Zheng Tan that if there were surveillance cameras installed here, they should be installed in a higher place, looking down or at the same level. This was a habit of many people. This way, they could better observe the overall situation. Of course, it didn't rule out the possibility of installing it near the ground. However, in a place like the kitchen, the possibility of the latter was very small. Besides, no matter how secretive and difficult the situation was, the other party wouldn't be the crow from the KGB. It wouldn't be that complicated. Thinking about it, Zheng Tan made a decision in his heart. Flathead looked at the black cat hiding on the cupboard and turned to leave. After a while, he returned to the kitchen with a can of cat food in his hand. Opening the can of cat food, Flathead took out a plastic plate from the cupboard and poured the can of cat food into it. Me, come and eat the can," Flathead said as he walked closer. "Zheng Tan, you're the me. Your whole family is big, me. Zheng Tan hated it the most when people shouted this word at him. This kind of behavior was King stupid. Originally, Zheng Tan had a good impression of Flathead, but as soon as he said this word, his impression of him plummeted. However, even if he didn't feel good, he still had to do what he needed to do. When Flathead approached the cupboard, Zheng Tan jumped down and hid directly under the cupboard. Behind the cupboard was a shelf. Whether it was the shelf or the cupboard, the space at the bottom was relatively dark. At the same time, it was enough for Zheng Tan to walk around. Zheng Tan crouched down and walked around the bottom. He didn't find any suspicious surveillance objects. Other than a few insect corpses, there was some dust. Since his body was dirty, Zheng Tan wasn't afraid of getting dirtier. "How is it?" The woman with wet hair and a bathrobe walked to the kitchen door and asked while drying her hair with a towel. "F***, isn't this too fast?" Zheng Tan cursed in his heart. Probably afraid that Flathead would take the opportunity to leak the secret, the woman came out quickly. It was obvious that Flathead was being watched quite closely. No wonder Celestine said that it was not good to let people come in contact with him. However, Zheng Tan wasn't worried now. He stayed under the cupboard and waited for Flathead. "Do you want to use a broom or something to drive it away?" the woman asked. "The more you do this, the less it will come out," Flathead said helplessly. He held a plate of canned cat food in his hand. He bent down, lay on the ground, and put the plate in his hand under the cupboard. The woman standing at the door had a flash of contempt in her eyes. She didn't go in but stood at the kitchen door and watched. The kitchen was still filled with the smell of pepper. The sunlight from the window could see floating dust particles. This made the woman frown even more and she took a step back. As long as Flathead didn't do anything suspicious, it was fine. There was no need for her to go in and suffer. 3 minutes passed. There was still no progress. Zheng Tan also wanted to quickly finish the handover with Flathead, but Celestine had already reminded Zheng Tan a few times to be patient and calm down. Zheng Tan thought about Celestine's conclusion. As a stray cat, it has to show its sorry side, but it also has to show its hesitation and vigilance towards humans. It shouldn't trust people so easily. The details determine success or failure. And because of that woman, Flathead definitely won't let you stay there forever. This is because those people once killed a stray cat that hid in the house without coming out. No matter what, Zheng Tan felt that he should act like he wanted to resist. No, it should be retreating in order to advance. The woman standing at the door was already impatient. When will it come out? Don't blame me for being blunt, Flathead. I really want to take a feather duster and hit it twice. Look at the kitchen that I worked so hard to tidy up, and now it's like this. The woman complained. Zheng Tan, who was squatting under the cupboard and shelf, heard the woman's words. He thought to himself, come on, hit me. If the woman heard Zheng Tan's thoughts, she would be furious. Seeing that the cat had changed its position, Flathead stretched out his arm and moved the plate over. At the same time, he was also paying attention to the cat's movements. Zheng Tan looked at the pair of feet standing at the kitchen door, then looked at Flathead. Flathead looked at the cat that had changed its position and was squatting there. From his angle, the cat's eyes were bright because of the reflection of light in the dark environment, which made Flathead feel strange. But Flathead didn't know how to describe it. He always felt that it was different from the cats he had seen before. It was very different. When he looked into the cat's eyes, he always felt uncomfortable. Flathead felt that it was because of the light and the angle. Just when Flathead felt that this method of tempting food probably wouldn't work and that he should leave for a while, he saw the cat walk towards him and close to his hand. This made Flathead very happy. He decided to quickly catch the cat after it was full and release it. Otherwise, he didn't know if it would be poisoned by the rat poison if it kept staying here. Even if it scratched him twice, it wouldn't be a big deal. He had been stabbed with a knife, so scratching with a cat's claws was a piece of cake. But Flathead's mood didn't last long. The next moment, Flathead felt the hair on his back standing up. He saw that when the cat got close to his hand, it raised one of its paws and put it by its mouth. Then, the cat stretched its paw towards him and a small plastic film fell on his hand. Flathead was very familiar with this kind of plastic film. He used to use this kind of thing to communicate. Zheng Tan wasn't very satisfied with this method of communication because the thing was placed in his mouth. There was a small bayonet on his fangs, so Zheng Tan didn't open his mouth when he came here. After taking out the thing in his mouth, Zheng Tan felt that his mouth was a lot more comfortable. Zheng Tan was comfortable, but Flathead's mood was like a vertical roller coaster that swooped down dozens of floors. Moreover, this change in mood happened without any preparation. Contact? A cat? Damn, the contact was actually a cat. How did they find such a weirdo? Many people trained pigeons, mice, and dogs, but very few people trained cats. Flathead had never seen any before. Chapter 85. Flathead flipped his hand, and the plastic film on his thumb fell off. Before the film fell to the ground, Flathead used his middle finger and ring finger to catch it. The friction between his fingers removed the cat's saliva on the surface of the film, and the touch became clearer. Flathead was sure that it was the kind of film he was thinking about. He then looked at the cat that was crouching next to the plate and sniffing the can without eating it. If Flathead still didn't understand, then he shouldn't be working undercover anymore. Although he felt like he was struck by lightning, he didn't show it on his face. After getting the plastic film, Flathead understood what his priority was. And this cat should have been trained, right? Nothing would happen for now. He retracted his arm. The plastic sheet that he had been holding between his fingers was nowhere to be seen. He stood up and said to the woman standing at the door, "I'll go find some gloves and a flashlight. I'll grab it later so that it doesn't hide in there forever." The woman nodded. After Flathead left, she gathered her bathrobe, squatted down slightly, and looked under the cupboard. Zheng Tan wasn't hiding too far away. The plate was only an arm's length away from the cupboard, so the woman could see what was going on inside. It wasn't very clear, but at least she could roughly see what was going on inside. When the woman lowered her body to take a look, she happened to see the cat open its mouth, revealing its fangs. When the cat closed its mouth and their eyes met, the woman saw the two bright eyes that reflected the light. She stood up abruptly and took 2 steps back. Because her movement was so sudden, she almost fell. She remembered the cat that she had asked someone to get rid of when Flathead wasn't around. It was also a stray cat like this. That was why stray cats were the most annoying. They were ugly, stupid, and had fierce eyes. If Zheng Tan knew that his behavior had caused this woman to hate him so much, he would definitely cry out. This was because he just wanted to yawn. Before, there was something stuck in his mouth, so he didn't dare to open it. Now that he took out the plastic film, he could yawn as much as he wanted. The woman did not want to continue watching the cat. She went to the junk room and saw Flathead rummaging through something. Seeing that Flathead was indeed holding a pair of gloves, the woman was relieved. When Flathead found a flashlight, the woman was standing quite far away from the kitchen. Although Flathead was quite skilled, she was afraid that if Flathead let go of the cat and let it escape, she would be scratched by the cat. Flathead placed the flashlight to the side and reached a gloved hand into the cupboard. With a flick of his finger, the plastic piece from earlier appeared on his fingertip. What was different from before was that there was a small square piece about 1 centimeter long wrapped in the plastic film. Zheng Tan thought that this should be what Celestine and Yi Hao wanted. However, Zheng Tan's mysophobia was acting up again. However, in order to resolve this matter as soon as possible, Zheng Tan still endured his displeasure. He raised his claws to take the diaphragm and put it in his mouth. The bayonet was stuck between his fangs. This way, he could prevent himself from accidentally swallowing it. Seeing the cat's actions in front of him, although Flathead had prepared himself mentally, he still could not calm down. He already knew the information on the diaphragm and acted according to the instructions on the diaphragm. However, he did not expect that the cat would really do as the diaphragm said and put away the diaphragm that wrapped the memory card properly. Was this really just a cat? Flathead really wanted to use some kind of instrument to check if it was a new type of high-end simulation robot. No, to check if it was a simulation of a Doraemon. After everything was settled, Flathead grabbed one of Zheng Tan's arms and tried to bring him out. After thinking for a while, Flathead extended his other hand. This way, the cat should not feel too uncomfortable. Zheng Tan walked out with Flathead's strength. When he was lifted out from the bottom of the cupboard, Zheng Tan remembered Celestine's words. Thus, he struggled for a while and raised his claws to scratch the part of Flathead's arm that was not covered by the gloves. He immediately scratched a few bloody marks. Zheng Tan was also very helpless about this. Celestine had said that there were wild cats that did not scratch people. In order to reduce the chances of being suspected, he still had to put on this act. Flathead did not care anyway. He did not care about this small injury. However, even if Flathead did not care, the woman standing outside the kitchen did not think so. Once she saw the bloody marks on Flathead's hand, she took a few steps back. Suddenly, she thought of something. The woman quickly ran to the door and opened it. She signaled Flathead to throw the cat out quickly. Otherwise, there would be more and more bloody marks on his hand. It looked very scary. After leaving the house, Flathead let go of his hand. Zheng Tan ran out and jumped onto the courtyard wall. He immediately disappeared from Flathead and the woman's sight. Flathead looked at the empty wall. Although he did not show it on his face, he felt a lot more relaxed. At least he had handed over the thing. Thinking back to the situation when he saw the black cat, Flathead felt that the cat was strange. He also admired the people over there. He really did not know where they found such a cat. Oh, quickly treat the wound. That cat might have some disease on it. The woman looked at the wound on Flathead's hand and said. Flathead smiled indifferently and turned to go into the house. Zheng Tan, who had jumped over the courtyard wall, ran all the way to a more secluded meeting place that Celestine had mentioned. After waiting for a while, Celestine came over. Zheng Tan jumped into Celestine's backpack and was then taken out of the place by Celestine. They came to the side of the road and stopped a taxi. After 5 minutes, they got off at a large supermarket. Celestine's car was in the supermarket's parking lot. After getting back into the car, Zheng Tan came out of the backpack. Sometimes, Zheng Tan felt that Celestine was too cautious and thought that problems were too complicated. He felt that his actions were superfluous. Wei Lin drove the car onto the main road and looked at the rearview mirror. He saw that the cat couldn't wait to get out of the bag with an impatient look on its face. He joked, "Many things are like that. You can just go straight to the point, but foreplay adds to the fun and makes things more natural. When the conditions are right, success will come naturally. In order to get a better result, some things are unavoidable. Forget it, even if I told you, you wouldn't understand." Xianxia. I understand, but this analogy is King wretched. It does not match the situation at all. How is it? Is it going well inside? Although he had already gotten what he wanted, Celestine was in a good mood and seemed to be a chatterbox. He did not want to get any answers from a cat, so he started to ask and answer his own questions. Although Flathead likes cats, he has never raised one himself. So, he doesn't know much about cats' temperaments and habits. "Oh, I heard that he used to raise cats, but after the cat got into an accident, no one heard of him raising cats anymore. They only know that he often buys cans of cat food for stray cats. Actually, everyone can understand. After all, it is difficult for Flathead to settle down in this industry. Raising cats and dogs is a burden. It's okay now, but a few years ago..." Celestine was helping Flathead improve his impression of him. After that, he picked up his phone and called Yihao. Xianxia looked at the person in front of him, who was talking on his phone while driving. He shook his head and hoped that Celestine would not drive directly into the flower bed. Looking around, Xianxia pulled out a bottle of mineral water from Celestine's bag. He put his paws on the bottle cap and twisted it hard to open the bottle. Then, he held the bottle of mineral water and poured it into his mouth. It was not that he wanted to drink water, he just wanted to rinse his mouth. After rinsing his mouth, Xianxia felt that his body was much more wet. Water droplets with dust dripped onto the back seat. Suddenly, he felt a little itchy. Did he get fleas again? Thinking about fleas gave Xianxia a headache. He simply held the bottle of mineral water and used the water inside to rinse his body. Anyway, the temperature was not low, so it was fine to get wet. On the other side, when he received Celestine's call, Yihao was discussing the next step of the plan with Ronqi and Leopard. They were preparing to send someone to contact Flathead again. He needed to carry out the next step of the plan. To be on the safe side, it was better to get the information as soon as possible in case something went wrong. To be honest, Yihao did not have much confidence in letting the cat contact Flathead. Even if it failed, it would be fine as long as the plastic film in the cat's mouth was not exposed. Taking a step back, even if the plastic film was found, the other party would not know what kind of information was conveyed on the film. However, he did not expect Celestine to tell him that it was a success. After hanging up the phone, Yihao looked at Ronqi and Leopard in front of him and said, "We have the information. When the time comes, we can speed up the implementation of the plan." "You have it." Ronqi suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. He could not help but feel creeped out that a cat could handle this kind of thing so smoothly. On the other side, Celestine finished the call and heard the sound behind him. He raised his head and looked at the rearview mirror. He saw that the cat in the back seat was holding a bottle of mineral water and rinsing his body. He almost drove the car directly into the flower bed on the side of the road. "You actually started taking a shower in the car." No matter what, after this, Celestine's car had to be cleaned from the inside out. This time, Celestine did not take Xianxia to the night building, but to a quiet villa. Yihao, Ronqi, and Leopard were all in the house. When they saw Celestine come in, the three of them looked behind Celestine at the same time. They did not see the cat, and then turned their eyes to Celestine's big backpack. After Celestine unloaded the backpack, Xianxia jumped out of the backpack. He did not look at the three people with different expressions and began to look for the bathroom. He felt uncomfortable when he thought about the fleas on his body again. It must have been when he was in the grass near Flathead's house. His luck was really King bad. Celestine saw Xianxia's behavior and knew what he was going to do. After giving the things to Yihao, he went to the bathroom and turned on the water. After the cat finished bathing, he used a hairdryer to dry his fur. After washing and drying his fur, Xianxia finally felt refreshed. Celestine did not stay for long. He rejected Yihao's invitation to stay and changed his car to send Xianxia back to Tsinghua University. He did not come back for another night. the Jiao family would probably scold him again. It was better to send him back as soon as possible. At night, at the Jiao family, Zheng Tan took a shower again. He sprayed some of the anti-flea medicine he got from Old Man Lon and then crawled into little Pomelo's bed. Chapter 86. The campus in July was lush and green. Although there were often people who would repair the flower beds and green belts, the growth of the plants was too fast. Every few days they would change their appearance. For the people of Chuhua City, July and August were always annoying. The weather was too hot, so people rarely went out during the day. Zheng Tan lay on the balcony on the 5th floor. There was a pot of orchid beside it, which was a gift from Old Man Lon. Zheng Tan liked to lie on the flower pot and sleep there. At this time, the balcony was shady, so it might be hot for people, but for cats, the temperature was still okay. After all, their body temperature was higher than that of humans. Therefore, Zheng Tan preferred the balcony to the indoor air conditioning. In the blink of an eye, he had been here for more than a year. Zheng Tan didn't notice it before, but when he found out that Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were on summer vacation, Zheng Tan realized that it was summer vacation again. At this time last year, Zheng Tan had not been here for long. He was repulsed by everything. He felt insecure, lost, helpless, and had other complicated feelings. Now that he thought about it, his feelings back then were a little blurry. However, he could still remember everything that had happened since he came here. As he was thinking, he felt a little itchy under his chin. Zheng Tan rubbed his chin on the protruding edge of the flower pot, yawned, and squinted his eyes to look at the people walking around with umbrellas. Jiao Yuan was still crazy outside on such a hot day. Jiao Yuan and Xianxia had been going out to play recently. Today they went to the swimming pool, and tomorrow they went to play basketball. Their schedule was full. Except for meals, they weren't at home much during the day. Anyway, the children in the courtyard were all together, and there were always some parents around. They were all familiar with each other, so the parents of the other families weren't worried. Jiao Yuan, who had left elementary school, was always inexplicably excited. Even in the hot summer, he always had a silly smile on his face. He was already tanned after graduating from elementary school. Thinking about little Pomelo, who was staying in her room to do her homework, Zheng Tan couldn't help but sigh. Little girls were quieter. After sleeping for a while, Zheng Tan was woken up by a sound. Meow, meow. 2 cat meows came from downstairs. It wasn't a Huang, it wasn't the sheriff, and it definitely wasn't Fatty. Just by hearing this voice, Zheng Tan knew it was Peanut Candy without even looking. Candy Peanut had been following Li Yuanba around the streets ever since it was little, so it was familiar with the surrounding terrain. It often walked from the pet center to Chuhua University. Unlike dogs, when cats went out for a walk, the distance they could walk was much further than people could imagine. Of course, cats that had no sense of direction were not worth mentioning. For example, Huang's furthest place was still within Chuhua University, and it was always with Zheng Tan and the others. If Huang was alone, it wouldn't even leave the courtyard. Zheng Tan used to think that Huang was afraid of people outside and other pet dogs that it didn't know. However, after taking this guy out a few times, Zheng Tan realized that this guy didn't really remember the way. Perhaps after it lost its power, it stopped peeing everywhere. Without road signs, it couldn't remember the way. As for why Candy Peanut was walking alone now, it was mainly because Li Yuanba was sick. It had an intestinal infection or something. It was quite serious, and it made Yanzi and Xiaogua's hearts ache. Li Yuanba usually gave people the impression that it was very strong and healthy. It didn't even have a small illness. However, once it fell sick, it would make a lot of noise. In short, it had been staying at the pet center to recuperate. Candy Peanut would still go out whenever it had time. However, when Zheng Tan went to shoot an advertisement last time, he heard from Xiaogua that Candy Peanut would bring a mouse to Li Yuanba every time it went out, and it was a very big mouse. It seemed to be looking for praise, or maybe it was showing people that it had grown up and was no longer the kitten that always needed company. No matter what Candy Peanut was thinking, this kind of behavior continued. Sometimes, Candy Peanut would come over and call a few cats in the courtyard to go out with it. When there were more cats, it would probably be more imposing and not be bullied. Candy Peanut seemed to be only 7 or 8 months old, but it was bigger than other cats that were 7 or 8 months old. It was almost the same size as Jingtan and the others. Plus, its fur was slightly longer and thicker, so it was like a big cat. As for the personality mole on the side of Candy Peanut's mouth, as it grew bigger, the mole also became bigger, and it looked very funny. Jingtan went out with Candy Peanut a few times, and during these few times, Jingtan noticed a phenomenon. First, Candy Peanut was very skilled at catching mice. It seemed that Li Yuanba's teaching had played a key role. Second, this guy never caught mice in the same place. Today, it was on the street next door. Tomorrow, it would be at a warehouse in Tsinghua University. The day after, it would change to another place. In short, the mice came from different places every day. This made Jingtan a little puzzled. Different places. Could it be that the mice smelled different? Or maybe this was Candy Peanut's way of showing to Li Yuanba that it was very familiar with the surrounding terrain. Jingtan didn't understand, but he appreciated Candy Peanut's behavior. When Candy Peanut barked downstairs, the sheriff, who was sleeping in some corner of the grass, rushed out. It looked quite happy because every time Candy Peanut called for its partner, it was very likely that it was going to fight with a cat in a certain place. Maybe the cat there was blocking its way, so it fought once and cleared the way. Jingtan got up, stretched and ran downstairs. Huang had been locked up at home recently, and a pang wouldn't be far away from its old lady. Therefore, only Jingtan and the sheriff accompanied Candy Peanut to walk the streets. In one of the side doors of Tsinghua University, there was a small street about 100 meters away. There were some private houses there, and they were all built with several floors for renting to students. It was a little messy. Most of the people who rented there were guys. Girls didn't dare to come here because it was too remote. There was a building behind it that was said to be an abandoned project that hadn't been cleaned up yet. There were often fights there, and there were a few bloody incidents. Therefore, gradually, many people didn't go there. The remaining people chose to rent there because of the low rent. Otherwise, it would be very desolate. That was where Jingtan had followed Peanut Candy to today. Unfortunately, there were a few families holding a celebratory banquet and so on. They didn't go to a big hotel. The people here were used to celebrating in their own homes. Anyway, their houses were all 4 or 5 floors high, and there was a lot of space. They just needed to tidy it up a little. If it was just one house, it wouldn't be so bad. Now, there were a few houses. There were cars parked everywhere, and many people came and went. It was already past 4 in the afternoon. Jingtan saw a cat squatting by the wall of a house. It was quite big, and its fur was quite similar to the sheriff's. Other than this cat, Jingtan also saw a cat with long fur lying lazily under a car. After looking around, Candy Peanut didn't go any further. It probably didn't expect to encounter such a situation. After wagging its tail, it turned around and left. The sheriff was about to rush over and fight, but he was pulled back by Jingtan. There were too many people here. It was fine for cats to fight, but it wouldn't be so easy if people got involved. Moreover, this was other people's territory. It was better for cats to fight at night. That way, there wouldn't be people involved. However, Candy Peanut didn't come out every night. It all depended on the swallow's mood that day. Looking at Candy Peanut's decision today, it probably wouldn't come out at night. If it could come out at night, it wouldn't come here during the day. When Jingtan returned to the courtyard, he heard a voice coming from inside the house before he even entered the door. Lord Zeng. Why did Lord Zeng come over at this time? Jingtan was confused. After entering the house, Jingtan saw Lord Zeng holding a baby and talking to Jiaoma. Seeing Jingtan come in, Jiaoma quickly said, "There's no need to wait until dinner time. Black charcoal is back now." Jingtan pulled his ear. What was that? It sounded like he was a foodie. Lord Zeng sat on the sofa in the living room, looked at Jingtan and said, "Black charcoal, come here. This is Kitten." Kitten? Kittenjua? No wonder the iron face of Lord Zeng, that had never changed for thousands of years, was so soft now. Jingtan walked over, jumped on the sofa, and looked at the baby in Lord Zeng's arms. According to the time, Kittenjua should be around 3 months old. It couldn't talk or even crawl yet. Its hair wasn't very thick, and its eyes weren't very big, but they were very dark and full of spirit. It was said that children's eyes were like that. The black and white were distinct and clearer, not as cloudy as the eyes of adults. There was a pendant hanging around Kitten Zhuo's neck. It was the pendant made by little Zhuo with the 9-leaf grass. It should be hanging around Kitten Zhuo's neck now and in the future. Lord Zeng adjusted his holding position so that Kitten Zhuo could face Zheng Tan. The man and the cat looked at each other like that. Then Kitten Zhuo started laughing. As it laughed, it waved its arms like a chick flapping its wings. What the hell was it laughing about? Zheng Tan looked at the baby in front of him. The little guy kept babbling. He didn't know what he was saying, but his eyes and expression were very serious. "He's saying hello," Lord Zeng said. "Really?" Zheng Tan looked at the person who was still babbling. The little guy was laughing so hard that his saliva was dripping out. "How stupid! Black charcoal, say hello to your little brother," Jiaoma said from the side. "Say hello?" Zheng Tan was a little confused. It was such a small child. Would it hurt if he poked it? However, seeing the little guy trying to wave his arms, Zheng Tan still went over. He rubbed his palm on the sofa, wiping off some of the dust on his palm. Then he shook it and looked at his palm. After making sure that the sharp claws were hidden, he stretched out his palm. He touched Kitten Zhuo's chubby face. Seeing Zheng Tan's action, Lord Zeng had a slight smile on his face. Kitten Zhuo started laughing again after being touched by Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan was a little helpless. Why did this little brat like to laugh so much? Lord Zeng didn't stay here for too long and soon left. Chapter 87. After dinner, Jiaoma went out to dance with some of the female teachers in the courtyard. Jiao Yuan and Xiong Xiong went to play basketball. They would probably come back with Jiaoma at night. Little Pomelo was also brought along by Jiao Yuan. Jiaoma told her to interact with the children in the courtyard. Wuxia and Xianxia, who were in the same class as her, also went to play. The gymnasium was quite lively tonight. There were only Jiao Pa and Zheng Tan in the Jiao family. Jiao Pa didn't seem to be in a good mood today. As for Zheng Tan, he was too lazy to go out. He was still thinking about what happened to Zhuo Xiaomao this afternoon. Zheng Tan was lying on the sofa, bored. He glanced at the situation in the bedroom. Jiao Pa had his computer on, but he wasn't organizing papers. Instead, he was reading Mr. Zhou's compilation. Zheng Tan ran over and jumped on the desk. He looked. Jiao Pa was reading Hot Wind. Sensing Zheng Tan's arrival, Jiao Pa raised his head and looked at the cat stretching his neck. He smiled and said, "What? Are you interested?" Zheng Tan retracted his neck. He couldn't understand most of the articles. It was tiring to read them. Jiao Pa suddenly thought of something. He put the compilation on the desk and looked at Zheng Tan. He said, "Black charcoal, it's just the two of us now. Let's talk." Zheng Tan was embarrassed. If he could talk, he wouldn't have waited until now. However, Jiao Pa obviously meant that Zheng Tan would listen. He would do the talking. Sometimes, after keeping secrets in one's heart for a long time, one would really want to find someone to talk to. However, it wouldn't be good if too many people knew about these secrets. A cat that couldn't talk was the ideal listener. "Do you know about Project A?" Jiao Pa asked. Zheng Tan, who was about to jump off the desk and leave, stopped in his tracks. His ears pricked up. He retreated and squatted on the desk again, looking like he was listening attentively. Jiao Pa rubbed his forehead and said, "In the future, if Lord Zeng brings Zhuo Kitten here again, you should accompany her more. After all, we don't know if little Zhuo can come back safely." Zheng Tan still didn't quite understand what the Jiao Pa was saying, but he didn't say anything. He continued to squat there obediently and listened to the rest of the Jiao Pa's words. Although many people think that little Zhuo went abroad to follow up on the project, and that's what the school said, it's actually not the case. Perhaps some people who were as experienced as Lord Zeng would know a little about it, but they certainly wouldn't say anything. Little Zhuo went to participate in Project A, which was a very secretive project. The participants not only had to go through an identity check, but also had to be tested on their ability and sign a confidentiality agreement. I don't know much about that. I heard it from my old mentor, Old Master Yuan, when he was drunk. At that time, he happened to know a physics professor who was participating in the project. Old Master Yuan was quite emotional and couldn't stop talking. After he sobered up, he even made us swear not to tell anyone about it. However, you're not human, so I only told you this. Zheng Tan, not human? That was a stab to the chest. However, Zheng Tan really wasn't human. This was an indisputable fact. In the past, Old Master Yuan even joked that the people who participated in projects like this were special forces in the field of scientific research. The mission they carried out was very risky. The reason why Lord Zeng was always in a bad mood was because she wasn't sure if little Zhuo could come back safely after completing the project. Zheng Tan also felt a little heavy. To be honest, he really hoped that little Zhuo could come back safely, and he didn't want her to participate in this troublesome project. When we found out about this kind of project back then, we were actually a little against it. However, after thinking about it, the existence of this kind of project must have its own meaning. Those projects can't be made public, at least not in recent years. Many things will definitely cause public dissatisfaction once they are made public. However, from a higher point of view, it is necessary for it to exist. There are so many countries in the world, and many of them have their own secret research projects. On the surface, they say they are against XX research, but in fact they are secretly carrying out projects. Biochemistry, nuclear war, these are only some of the things that the public knows. Other than that, in the field of life science, there are cloning, cross-race embryo research, and so on. Those are actually allowed in the project. Otherwise, many technologies in this world wouldn't have developed so quickly. The aliens that people often talk about may actually have come from there. When Zheng Tan heard Jiaopa's words, he felt a chill down his spine. The things that he always thought were science fiction actually existed? Do you know what a geophysical weapon is? Some people have even said that weather control is more important than an atomic bomb. For example, in the 1970s, the KGB invented artificial storm technology. It suddenly changed the climate of a certain area to adapt to the needs of the battlefield. Maybe one day, this technology can be improved to directly create hurricanes. Or maybe this technology has already existed before we know it. The importance of the project is actually directly related to its danger level under certain circumstances. On a larger scale, national defense technology, national security, and technological development all rely on these projects. There are so many research institutes and universities in China, and a large number of professors and associate professors. However, those who really go deep into it know that a lot of the data of scientific research results are fake. As you can imagine, it is difficult to rely on these to solve the real needs of this country. These projects are actually not too far away from everyone's sight. It's just that no one knows about them. For example, aerospace is definitely not the so-called FACE project that many people think it is. There are many secrets involved, and not many people can say for sure. Jiaopa picked up the glass of water and drank. When he saw Zheng Tan's rigid and confused look, he smiled and nodded Zheng Tan's head. It's too far away to talk about this. Let's put it from another perspective. There may be other reasons why little Zhuo decided to participate in this project, but one of the reasons is definitely for little kitten Zhuo. As a benefit of participating in the project with their lives, the participants will receive some compensation. Reputation is impossible. After all, it is a confidential project. However, they can receive many conveniences that others can't enjoy, such as files. For example, little kitten Zhuo. According to reality, what will his personal file say in the future? Father unknown, mother unmarried? This will definitely be criticized. In our country, although reform and opening up and people's thoughts are much more open, after all, the influence of thousands of years of etiquette and rules will still have some color when looking at people. But because of little Zhuo, little kitten Zhuo's file will be different in the future. Perhaps in the father column, someone who sacrificed himself for scientific research will be arranged, or perhaps someone else. In short, those files will be real, can stand up to investigation, and are also recognized by the law. Zheng Tan lowered his head. These things were really heavy. It was hard for Jiaopa to keep it in his heart for so long. Sure enough, the lives of ordinary people were actually very happy. They didn't have to know about those things in the dark, and they didn't have to face the truth that might destroy their worldview. Being an ordinary person, being an ordinary cat, the world was still King beautiful. Actually, Jiao Pa thought of something again. Zheng Tan really wanted to cover his ears. He guessed that Jiao Pa was going to talk about something that would destroy the beautiful world in his heart again, but curiosity got the better of him and he didn't move his feet. Actually, I think that our institute should also have a quota, but no one is in a similar situation as Little Zhua. Those who went abroad were also to be evaluated, or really to participate in domestic and international cooperation projects. So I'm thinking that something that happened in the past must have caused the institute to lose its quota, so it's not qualified to send people to participate. Something that happened in the past? Zheng Tan's focus was not on the so-called secret project quota. He wasn't interested in that. He just wanted to know what happened in the institute in the past. Speaking of something that happened in the past, Jiao Pa became a little serious. When Zheng Tan was a little impatient, he finally spoke again. I heard that in the past, someone in the institute did a research. In the end, out of the 3 professors who participated in this research, 1 died and 2 were injured. This was caused by the results of their research. The code names of their experimental products were all CFH. Later, those who knew the inside story called it the CFH incident. I heard this from Old Man Yuan. After that, the institute and the higher-ups suppressed the news and got rid of the results. Even many teachers in the institute don't know about this incident. They only know that there was a research accident, but they don't know what exactly happened. Zheng Tan really wanted to know what this so-called CFH meant. Unfortunately, at this time, Jiao Ma came back with Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo. After the Jiao Pa said all the things that had been suppressed in his heart, he looked a lot more relaxed. Even if the cat in front of him couldn't speak, and probably couldn't understand, it didn't matter. He was just looking for a tree hole to talk about it. At this moment, Mr. Treehole was unusually depressed, lying on the desk. He raised his paw and flipped Mr. Zhou's book that was on the desk to the ground. To vent his anger, he flipped open the second book. Before Zheng Tan flipped the teacup, Jiao Yuan ran over to him to show off how many goals he had won against Xiong and the others. Zheng Tan was not in the mood to listen to him show off. He ran to the sofa in the living room and closed his eyes, pretending to be asleep. For the next few days, Zheng Tan was not in a good mood. Before dinner, Celestine, who he hadn't seen for a long time, drove over. Tomorrow was the weekend, and Celestine had nothing to do, so he came over to the villa complex to ask Zheng Tan to go to the night building with him. Since he had nothing to do, Zheng Tan went with him. In addition to relaxing, Zheng Tan also wanted to see how Ajin and the others were doing. Since Ajin and the others were discharged from the hospital, they had been serving dishes in the North District of the night building. The 5 of them were quite happy. It was said that they had rented a house nearby and had a dog. The dog was picked up by Ajin from the road. It was a little lame, but Ajin and the others were very good to the dog. In the night building, Yi Hao and the others were not there. There was only an unfamiliar manager-like person in charge of the place. Yi Hao and the others seemed to be very busy recently. Zheng Tan had not seen them several times when he came here. Yi Hao didn't want Celestine to intervene, and Celestine didn't ask much. When he was bored, he would come over for a drink. Zheng Tan would eat peanuts and other food next to him. After eating and drinking, Celestine sent Zheng Tan back. Chapter 88. There were still people coming and going for a walk in the courtyard. It should be around 8 o'clock. It was still early, so they could go out for a walk for an hour or 2. In the summer, people tended to go out later, not to mention that it was still summer vacation. The sheriff was probably locked up at home tonight, so the only person who could go out with peanut candy was Zheng Tan. Since there was nothing else to do, Zheng Tan followed peanut candy out. There were still students going in and out of the side door, but they didn't pay attention to the 2 cats. There were many cats around the school, so it was common to see them. This was a small street, and it was a private residential area. The control was relatively lax, and most of the people were doing business with students. The peddlers who had set up stalls outside were doing well. The light bulbs hanging from the stalls lit up the street. As they walked past, their ears were filled with the conversations between the peddlers and the students, as well as the sizzling sound of frying. Zheng Tan sniffed the rich aroma of food and turned to look at peanut candy. Other than occasionally raising his head to sniff the air, he didn't seem to be affected by the smell. As they continued to move forward and walked out of the area where the stalls were set up, they suddenly felt a lot more deserted. Moreover, because this was a private area filled with commoners, no one would pay for a street lamp. They could only see the road with the light from the private buildings. Therefore, after 10 o'clock, many people here gradually fell asleep, and there were a lot fewer people walking around here. It was only 8 o'clock, and the surroundings were still very bright. At least, it was still quite bright for Zheng Tan and Peanut Candy. Occasionally, they would encounter pet dogs squatting outside. If they had a leash, Zheng Tan and Peanut Candy wouldn't run away. They would maintain their original walking speed and be very calm. If an unleashed dog chased them, the two of them would jump on the wall and let the dog bark. After all, it wouldn't be long before someone came to call the dog. No matter what the situation was, they wouldn't run around. Zheng Tan had to admit that Peanut Candy's IQ was indeed higher than many cats. He just didn't know if this was taught by Li Yuanba or if she was born with it. When they arrived at the place where Peanut Candy had brought Zheng Tan and the sheriff 2 days ago, before they could declare war, Zheng Tan heard a woo. Woo. Looking towards the source of the sound, Zheng Tan saw a cat standing on top of a short stone pillar. It was the cat that looked quite similar to the sheriff. Now, it was arching its back and looking in his direction, purring in warning. Soon, the long-haired cat that Zheng Tan had seen ran over, its fur standing on end. In addition to these two cats, Zheng Tan also heard the movements of other cats around, but it was clear that the other cats were not as hostile as the two in front of him. Peanut Candy must have fought with these two cats before. Otherwise, these two cats wouldn't be so vigilant when they saw Peanut Candy. It looked like they were about to rush up, but they had some scruples. However, none of them flinched. There were two cats here, and they looked like the more outstanding cats in the area. Otherwise, the other cats would have dared to approach. Peanut Candy's size was similar to Zheng Tan's, but she was only 7 or 8 months old. Compared to the cats that had been free for a few years, she was still a little immature. Therefore, no matter how good Peanut Candy's fighting skills were, even if she didn't get hurt when she fought with these two cats, she definitely didn't win. While Zheng Tan was thinking, Peanut Candy had already rushed over to the stone pillar. With a leap, she quickly waved her paw at the cat standing on top of it. Peanut Candy didn't want to catch the cat, but only wanted to force it down from the stone pillar. After a few moves, the two sides were in a stalemate. They arched their backs, purred in a low voice, and wagged their tails twice. Then they fought again, scratching, biting, kicking, and chasing. This was how cats fought. The battlefield might be wider. In fact, Zheng Tan was quite embarrassed to fight with them. He always felt like he was bullying a child. However, in order to support Peanut Candy, Zheng Tan was just going through the motions. It was fine as long as it could act as a deterrent. There was no need to beat up the cat. It wasn't easy for these cats to live peacefully for a few years. Therefore, Zheng Tan just restrained the long-haired cat so that it wouldn't interfere with the battle. After that, he didn't do anything else. This scene was a little familiar. Zheng Tan remembered the noble Persian cat that he had robbed in Nanqing when he was first captured. Ignoring the long-haired cat that had been pressed to the ground and screaming, Zheng Tan watched Peanut Candy fight with the big black cat. It looked like Peanut Candy wouldn't lose. Last time, she didn't win 1 against 2. This time, she was probably venting all her frustrations. There were a few cats hiding in the corner watching the fight, but they didn't come over. A few wanted to come over, but after a few steps, they squatted down, probably wanting to observe the situation. Occasionally, someone would pass by. Due to the light, they didn't notice Zheng Tan, who was standing to the side. They only heard the cat that Zheng Tan was pressing down on constantly meowing and cursing, then immediately walked away. After all, when the cat wasn't crying so coquettishly, it sounded a little creepy, especially at night. Thinking of the poor security around here, the passers-by were all in a hurry. Zheng Tan looked at the cat that was struggling to no avail on the ground. He thought to himself, "Why do you have to do this? I won't do anything to you. Although holding you down here is better than scratching you a few times." When Zheng Tan realized that Peanut Candy was getting further and further away from the big black cat, she finally let go of the cat she was pinning down and followed them. As soon as the long-haired cat was released, it quickly left and didn't follow. It probably went back to its own home to seek comfort. The surroundings were relatively quiet. Zheng Tan could distinguish the sounds of the two cats fighting from the surrounding sounds. He could also tell from the occasional sharp screams that Peanut Candy was in a good situation. The one that screamed was the other cat, so he wasn't too worried and didn't walk in a hurry. Anyway, he wasn't going to get involved in the fight between the two cats. This time, he had achieved his goal of coming over. The long-haired cat had gone home, so he let Peanut Candy fight to her heart's content. He was a male cat after all. He had to fight a few times. Speaking of which, Peanut Candy was fighting an away game. As he walked, Zheng Tan was still in the mood to look at the surrounding environment and buildings. He hadn't been here before, but he heard that it was a little messy. The few times he had been here, he didn't go too deep, so the places he walked through now were relatively unfamiliar to Zheng Tan. Gradually, there were only a few private houses left. As he walked forward, there was only a wall on the side. Behind the wall should be the aborted construction project that people were talking about. He had only heard about it before, but now it seemed that this project was quite big and took up a lot of space. There wasn't much human life, there were weeds everywhere, and the ground was bumpy. It felt a little sad. However, according to Zheng Tan's guess, this area shouldn't be abandoned forever. After all, it was near the university, and the geographical location was good. It wasn't the suburbs, and it was still far from the third ring road. While she was deep in thought, Zheng Tan was startled by a very pitiful meow. The sound was very sudden, and before it finished, it stopped abruptly. This shouldn't be the cry of cats fighting, right? Zheng Tan had a bad feeling. Although the scream wasn't from Peanut Candy, but from the other cat, if this cat was in mortal danger, Peanut Candy was probably in danger too. He hoped that things weren't that bad. Zheng Tan quickly rushed in the direction of the scream. Although he was running very fast, his footsteps were very light. Zheng Tan also paid attention to the movements around him as he ran. When he came over just now, he didn't think that there would be anything to be vigilant about, but now it seemed that he had let his guard down. There was no threat from cats or dogs, but the threat of humans was always there. Although most people were civilized, ever since he was caught, Zheng Tan knew that there were still many people in this world who could kill a dog or a cat without blinking an eye. Zheng Tan didn't jump over the wall. He didn't know what it was like on the other side of the wall, and he didn't know if there was a place for him to hide or cover. After running for some distance, he could see the gate of the wall. The two metal gates were locked by thick chains, and a lot of the paint on the door was peeling off. The rust on the chains told people that no one had been in charge of this place for a long time. Zheng Tan perked up his ears and paid attention to the surroundings. He didn't hear any moving objects around. Bending down, Zheng Tan looked inside the wall through the gap under the iron gate. There were no other lighting devices around. Only the crescent moon in the sky allowed people to vaguely see the situation inside. For Zheng Tan, the vision was still relatively clear. 100 meters away, there was an unfinished building. The area between the wall and the building was relatively desolate and full of weeds. There were a few piles of construction waste piled up there, but other than that, it gave people a gloomy and empty feeling. The building was like a monster, waiting for intruders to enter with its mouth wide open. A gust of wind blew in his face. Zheng Tan smelled the scent of blood in the wind. It was the cats. When he was caught, Zheng Tan smelled the scent of cat blood. It was different from human blood. Zheng Tan was a little anxious. He vigilantly walked in the direction of the smell of blood. After walking for a while, he bypassed a pile of construction waste. Near the building, Zheng Tan saw the cat lying on the ground. 10 minutes ago, it was still fighting with Candy Peanut. But now, it was lying quietly on the ground. Its head was bleeding, and it was a little hard to see its original face. It had died a miserable death. Obviously, it had been hit more than once. And the tool that made it like this was the 70-centimeter construction hook that was thrown not far away. There was a human scent on the hook, which was as Zheng Tan expected. Zheng Tan's heart went cold. There was no time to be sad. He was eager to know where Candy Peanut was and what was the situation. However, Zheng Tan did not see any trace of Peanut Candy after cautiously circling the place. At least, this was a piece of good news. Was it in the building, or had it run out? The place where the cat was lying was very close to the building. He couldn't rule out the possibility that Candy Peanut had escaped into the building. If it had already escaped, with Candy Peanut's intelligence, it should have barked a few times to let him know, right? It seemed that it was very likely that the kid had entered the building and was probably hiding in a corner. Chapter 89. The building was not finished, and there were no windows or doors, so it was easy to get in. Zheng Tan walked in carefully, avoiding some of the debris on the ground and making sure that his movements did not make any noise. At the same time, Zheng Tan was also distinguishing the smell in the air, and his ears were also paying attention to the movements around him. A cat's sense of smell was about 20 times sharper than a human's, and they could also hear at least 2.5 octaves higher than a human's. They were used to seeing everything in the dark, and their bodies were smaller. These were all advantages that Zheng Tan had now. No matter what had happened in here, what kind of secret deal had been made, or who the grudges between people were, Zheng Tan was not interested at all. What he wanted most now was to find the peanut candy and retreat safely. Bang! There was a sound of something crashing upstairs. Zheng Tan was startled by the sound. It was indeed frightening for such a sound to suddenly appear in such a silent environment. On the first floor, except for the windows at the front door, the back door and some of the side windows were nailed with wooden boards. Although there were gaps, it was not enough for a cat to get out. Zheng Tan decided to go upstairs and take a look. The project was not finished, and there were no handrails on the stairs. He also had to pay attention to the rusty nails on the stairs. Zheng Tan quietly went to the stairs on the second floor, listening to the movements around him. The wind blew in, making some plastic sheets rustle, and then everything returned to normal. However, this was nothing. Zheng Tan found that there was a person lying in the place where the noise had been made, and there was no sound. Taking a deep breath, Zheng Tan tried to calm himself down. At this time, he could not panic. Emboldened, Zheng Tan walked over, looked around the person, and found a drop of blood in the corner against the wall. Someone must have been hiding here for a while. The blood had not dried yet, so it had not been long. However, Zheng Tan sniffed the blood and the wall to confirm. The smell of the injured person was a bit familiar. Thinking back, Zheng Tan first excluded the people on campus, and then a few people that he rarely saw. It was not Xiaogua, not Celestine, not Ajin, not Yi Hao. Yi Hao. That's right, it's that guy. F***ck, what the hell is going on? How did Yi Hao end up like this? Had he been tricked? First, it was the peanut candy, and now it was Yi Hao. Zheng Tan felt that his luck today must be as bad as **T. Since he had smelled Yi Hao's scent, Zheng Tan didn't know where to look for the peanut candies. After all, each floor of this building was quite large, so he followed the scent. Yi Hao was injured, but the extent of his injury was unknown. Zheng Tan could find traces of blood from a distance. It wasn't much, but the blood stains and the lingering smell around were enough for Zheng Tan to accurately locate Yi Hao. However, when Zheng Tan was looking for Yi Hao, he also smelled the scent of other strangers. His ears twitched as he paid attention to the tiny footsteps that were hard for human ears to hear, as well as the unfamiliar smell of sweat. The good thing about summer was that one's scent couldn't be hidden very well. That stranger was now walking towards Yi Hao. Zheng Tan hid behind a wall and watched the approaching stranger. That person's footsteps were very light, but not slow. He must have found Yi Hao's hiding spot from some clues. At the same time, he was also very vigilant, paying attention to the surrounding movements. That person was holding a construction hook in his hand, the same one that Zheng Tan had found beside the dead cat. The surrounding windows were covered with plastic sheets. Only one corner was broken because of the passage of time or some other reason. The corner was broken, so it wasn't completely dark inside. Zheng Tan watched as that person walked towards a small room. Yi Hao should be inside. Give him a hand. He hoped that Yi Hao would remember that this was the second time he had helped him. When that person approached Yi Hao with the construction hook, and Yi Hao was also in a state of anxiety, they didn't expect that there was a third party watching them. Awoo! Suddenly, a strange cry made the two people's hair stand up almost at the same time. There was no wind now. Whether it was the plastic sheets covering the windows or the plastic sheets on the ground, they didn't make any sound. In the dead silent and tense atmosphere, when the two people thought that there was only one enemy and no other living creatures, it had to be said that this sudden cry made their scalps go numb. However, after this meow, the two of them had completely different feelings. The stranger with the construction hook was annoyed after being nervous. He regretted that he didn't get rid of all the cats in the surrounding area and only got rid of one. Yi Hao, who was holding the wound on his abdomen and was gradually losing strength, was prepared for the worst. After the shock, he felt a burst of joy and a little doubt. This cry was quite familiar. He had been tortured in the night building that day, so it left a deep impression on him. And Celestine also said that only that cat could make such an effect. It was that cat, right? After the cry, Zheng Tan moved to another place. He bent his paws and picked up a nail on the ground. Then, he threw it when that person continued to approach Yi Hao. His aim was good, and it hit that person's back. After throwing the nail, Zheng Tan retreated to the corner. He only dared to shout because he noticed that there was no one else around except Yi Hao and this person. Moreover, he was now far away from this stranger. Even if this person was skilled in martial arts, he couldn't possibly attack from a distance of more than 10 meters, could he? Just as he retreated, Zheng Tan heard banging sounds and the sound of metal falling. So fast? Zheng Tan poked his head out and saw that the stranger had fallen. Yi Hao was also leaning against the wall, holding a dagger in his hand. The dagger was still dripping with blood. He had probably attacked when the other person was distracted and paying attention to his back. Zheng Tan pulled his ear. In fact, he was still fantasizing about making a move when Yi Hao and that person were locked in a fight. Now, he realized that he was ridiculously wrong. People like these all tried their best to kill with one blow. Every second they lasted would put their lives in danger for another second. Yi Hao held the dagger in one hand and covered his abdomen with the other. He leaned against the wall and slowly sat down, panting. His actions just now had probably worsened his injury. "Awo!" Zheng Tan cried out again. "Where did that little bastard Candy Peanut go?" Meow, meow. Along with the cry, there was the sound of wooden boards clanging. It was right next to where Yi Hao had been hiding. Zheng Tan hurried over. When he walked into the small room, he realized that something was being built inside. The floor was slightly sunken, and there were wooden boards on top. There were gaps between the boards, and one of Candy Peanut's legs was stuck in it. However, because of the previous situation, it didn't dare to struggle and make any noise until now. It was quite smart. Before Zheng Tan could lift the wooden board, Candy Peanut had struggled out by itself. However, it seemed that this guy's leg was still injured. It was unknown if it was temporarily sprained or fractured. It walked with a limp and seemed to be struggling. Meow. Candy Peanut walked over to Zheng Tan. It sounded like it had been wronged. Zheng Tan raised his paw and patted Candy Peanut's head, telling it to stay where it was and not move. Then he went to Yi Hao's side to see how long this guy could last. Yi Hao was more capable than Zheng Tan had imagined. He moved to the side, probably to guard against any unexpected situations. He took out his phone and said to Zheng Tan, "Help me keep an eye on the outside. I'm going to make a call." When he noticed that the two people had entered the building, Yi Hao had turned off his phone. In this kind of environment, a little vibration or a little abnormal light could expose him to the other party. Zheng Tan looked at Candy Peanut, who was obediently licking some small wounds on its leg. Then he walked to the staircase and jumped onto the windowsill. While he was watching the staircase, he was also looking to see if anyone was coming from outside the building. Yi Hao called Ran Qi and the others. They would probably send someone over soon. After the call, Yi Hao did not intend to wait here. Besides his own people, the other party should have contacted someone else. So, once the other party's people arrived first, Yi Hao would be dead meat if he stayed here. After a while, Yi Hao was about to stand up. Then, he thought of something and said to Zheng Tan, "Is that cat injured? Let me carry it down." When he was on the phone, Yi Hao saw the cat lying not too far away from him with the help of the brightness of the phone screen. No matter what, the cat had helped him. Otherwise, he would not have noticed that the two people were following him. The two cats came over to fight and exposed the two people's whereabouts. It also allowed Yi Hao to prepare himself. However, it was a pity that the other cat was injured. Candy Peanut seemed to understand that the person in front of it meant no harm. It looked at Zheng Tan and then allowed Yi Hao to pick it up. Yi Hao tore some cloth from the clothes of the person lying on the ground. It was summer clothes, so it was just that. After simply bandaging the wound, Yi Hao was now holding the cat in one hand and a dagger in the other. He followed Zheng Tan downstairs. Zheng Tan listened to the movements around him and slowly walked out of the building. The wind from the empty field area made Zheng Tan relax a lot. However, he could not let his guard down and let his guard down. Zheng Tan walked out of the building. Under Yi Hao's guidance, he found out that there was an exit on the other side. A section of the wall on the other side had collapsed. That was why Yi Hao had come here. When they were close to the exit, Zheng Tan smelled the faint scent of a stranger in the air. He stopped in his tracks and raised his paw to stop Yi Hao from moving forward. The next moment, Yi Hao fell to the side and rolled to the side next to a pile of construction rubbish. He turned over to avoid it. At the same time that Yi Hao reacted, a bullet brushed past Yi Hao's shoulder. If it were not for Zheng Tan's warning and his fast reaction, he probably would have gotten more than just a scratch. There was someone waiting here. And it was a gun with a silencer. Zheng Tan wanted to curse Buddha in his heart. He was so unlucky today. Who on earth did Yi Hao offend? Why was he so cruel? It was fine if it was just a knife, but a gun? Zheng Tan quickly dragged the peanut candy that had fallen to the ground to the side and hid behind a pile of bricks. The bricks were not high, so they could only be used as a last resort. When he was thinking of other ways, Zheng Tan suddenly felt a chill on his back. It was unfamiliar and different from the chill he felt when he saw Yi Hao kill people. The man with the gun seemed to be confused all of a sudden. Some of the bullets were fired at the wall, while some were fired at other places. Some of the bullets were fired at Zheng Tan's side, while some were fired at other places. Some of the bullets were fired at Zheng Tan's side, while some were fired at other places as well. At the same time, Zheng Tan also heard a very strange murmur. It was like a suppressed roar coming from the throat. Other than that, there was the scream of the man with the gun. Zheng Tan carefully poked his head out to take a look. He happened to see the man with the gun fall down, and a figure rushed over. The sound of flesh being torn apart was chilling. The man lying on the ground twitched, and the gun in his hand had fallen off. There were several deep bloodstains on the hand holding the gun, and they were all on the wrist. As for the figure, was it a dog or a cat? Or some other creature? No matter what it was, it waved its paw at the neck of the man on the ground again. The man on the ground twitched for a while, and soon he stopped breathing. This scene shocked both Zheng Tan and Yi Hao. The chill spread all over their bodies, and their hair almost stood on end.